the Council's foundational values and to enhance its effectiveness in responding to today's complex challenges that are interconnected, pervasive, and demand comprehensive solutions. For the Republic of Moldova, membership in the Council of Europe has never been the end. From the very beginning, it has represented a defining step towards our European future, a path anchored in values and standards and a shared vision of tomorrow. Today, as a candidate country to join the European Union, this perspective is stronger than ever. It reinforces our determination not only to align with European standards, but also to actively contribute to shaping them. This evolution is reflected in our trajectory. In the past, the Republic of Moldova has contributed to the development of key Council of Europe conventions, including in areas such as the prevention of human trafficking, and more recently, emerging domains such as artificial intelligence. Today, in our capacity as the President of the Committee of Ministers, we have sought to build on this legacy by promoting forward-looking initiatives, fostering dialogue, and advancing concrete responses to new, complex challenges of our societies. We are witnessing with concern a growing tendency to relativize human rights protections. This trend calls for renewed investment not only in enforcement mechanisms, but also in public awareness and education, empowering citizens and human rights defenders alike. In the spirit of our presidency, has placed particular emphasis on social rights and women's rights, including the effective implementation of the Istanbul Convention. Two significant milestones illustrate this commitment. The first is the adoption of the recommendations on accountability for technology-facilitated violence against women and girls. The first international standard addressing this issue clearly defines states' responsibilities in ensuring accountability in the digital age. The second is the side event organized in New York during the 70th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, which focused on gender-responsive policing, cooperation between law enforcement and technology companies, and strengthening the full chain from reporting to prosecution for online abuses. Social rights have also been central to our agenda, culminating in the high-level conference on March 19th in Chisinau, which resulted with the adoption of the forward-looking political declaration. This declaration reaffirms our shared commitment that social rights are not secondary, they are foundational. They underpin social justice, enable economic strength, and open the door to full enjoyment of all other rights. Importantly, 8 member states used this occasion to commit to additional provisions for the European Social Charter, a strong signal of renewed dedication to advancing social protection across Europe. In parallel, we must address challenges to the rule of law. A transactional approach to justice risks weakening institutions. What is needed, indeed, is renewed determination to protect their independence, integrity, and effectiveness. The credibility of the European Convention of Human Rights rests fundamentally on the execution of the Court's judgments. Progress is visible. More cases are being closed, more states have advanced in the implementation. At the first quarterly meeting of the Committee of Ministers, its Human Rights Formation held in March, 42 decisions concerning 21 states were adopted. The committee also adopted 18 final resolutions in respect to 40 judgments of the Court concerning 10 different states. In the end of March, the Committee of Ministers released its annual report of 2025 on the execution of judgments. The report indicates positive trends, including an increased number of cases closed and significant progress made by many countries. Yet challenges persist and must be addressed with urgency and consistency. All member states must fully honor their obligations. This includes notably cases concerning the former member of the Russian Federation, which remains legally bound to execute the Court's judgments, including the payment of satisfaction. In this context, as regards the institutional dialogue with the Court in February 2026, the Committee of Ministers decided to extend the format of the exchange of views held twice a year with the President of the European Court to include one supplementary exchange each autumn on developments in the Convention case law and principles. It reflects our commitment to a more dynamic and responsive Convention system. Distinguished members, Democratic backsliding cannot be addressed with isolated measures. It requires strategic coordination responses, engaging both institutions and society. In times of uncertainty, citizens look for stability. The stability is often found closest to them in strong, transparent, and accountable local institutions. Local democracy is where trust is built day by day. In this regard, we are pleased to host later this month in Chisinau a conference on multi-level governance in cooperation with the Congress of Local Regional Authorities. It will foster dialogue across levels of governance and with civil society. We have also advanced youth participation. We are glad that during our presidency, the Committee of Ministers adopted a recommendation to Member States on the new text of the European Charter on the participation of young people in local and regional life, calling upon Member States to create and support youth participation structures and policies that enable young people to take part in decision-making. This is not only an investment in the future, it is necessary for the present. Democracy must be lived and experienced by younger generations for it to endure. Democracy is fundamental. We are equally aware of the increased challenges faced by journalists and the need to preserve and promote journalists' ability to inform the public and the integrity of the information space. The Moldovan presidency of the Committee of Ministers will host this week in Chisinau the high-level conference titled Defending Truth, Comprehensive Approaches to Journalistic Safety and Quality Journalism, organized in the framework of the Council of Europe Journalists Matter campaign. The event also aims to promote a holistic and preventive approach to protecting journalists, strengthening the quality and integrity of journalism, and reinforcing democratic resilience across Europe. Distinguished members of the Assembly, in recent years, issues relating to migration, including the relationship between the Convention and national measures to control migration, have become the subject of intense political debate within and between many Council of Europe member states. At the conference on the 10th of December, ministers from 46 member states called for the preparation of the political declaration on issues related to migration and the European Convention of Human Rights. The ministers' deputies are currently preparing the text of the political declaration, which is expected to be adopted at the next formal session of the Committee of Ministers held in Chisinau on May 15th. All these efforts, together with other priority actions, are aligned with the three overarching priorities: accountability for Ukraine, the new Democratic Pact for Europe, and addressing disinformation and foreign information manipulation and interference. First and foremost, accountability for Ukraine. There can be no democracy without justice, no justice without rule of law, and no lasting peace without accountability. Support for Ukraine remains central to our presidency. The International Claims Commission, already signed by 35 countries, including the Republic of Moldova and the European Union, must now enter into force swiftly. 2 member states have already ratified it, Estonia and Latvia, and we call upon others to follow suit. It represents a concrete path towards justice for the immense suffering caused by Russia's aggression. It remains of utmost importance that the Convention enters into force as soon as possible. 25 ratifications are necessary. I'd like to see this opportunity to encourage the distinguished members of the Assembly of the signatory states to fully support the ratification process in their respective countries. The Claims Commission will build on the forerunner work done by the Register of Damages, which has 140,000 claims submitted and over 40,000 recorded, and regularly opens new categories of claims. We also continue advancing the establishment of the Special Tribunal for the Crime of Aggression. The Republic of Moldova is among the states committed to being a founding member. We encourage others to join, as legitimacy, strength, and sustainability depend on our collective engagement. At a time of geopolitical shifts, rising authoritarianism, and growing hybrid threats, the new Democratic Pact for Europe is not just timely, it is essential. It is our collective answer to reinforce the foundations of democracy, to make it more resilient, and to ensure it remains meaningful for our citizens. Though this pact of 46 member states are called to take ownership of their democratic future, our response must be structured around these core objectives: democratic stability, democratic resilience, and democratic security. In this context, I would highlight the high-level conference on media literacy and information integrity held in Chisinau in March. Disinformation and manipulation are no longer peripheral threats. They strike at the heart of democracy. They erode trust, distort public debate, and weaken institutions. Crucially, we must confront one of the most pressing threats to our democracies: foreign information manipulation and interference, better known as FIMI. FIMI is a deliberate and coordinated effort to distort reality, erode trust in institutions, weaken democratic institutions. It targets our citizens' ability to make informed choices, undermining free and fair democratic process. Defending against FIMI means defending democracy itself, free choice, open debate, and the integrity of public discourse. FIMI must be addressed and has been a key priority for our presidency. The Committee of Experts has completed a feasibility study which clearly confirms three essential points: that FIMI constitutes a real and evolving threat, that isolated responses are insufficient, and that a coordinated whole-of-society approach is indispensable. This work has just been finalized and transmitted to the Committee of Ministers to act upon in the process of preparing the Chisinau Ministerial in May. Member States are now called upon to decide on the most appropriate angle and legal instrument to address FIMI and related hybrid threats. The Council of Europe has a clear added value in shaping such a response through a legal and policy framework that reflects our shared values and diverse national experiences. Defending democratic security inside Europe also requires a coherent, visible engagement beyond Europe. In the current unstable geopolitical context, the Council of Europe should position itself as a regional actor capable of contributing to the protection and promotion of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law through its external action. The Committee of Ministers, along with the Secretariat, is preparing a strategy for the Council of Europe external action, which will be adopted at the ministerial meeting in May. The strategy aims to strengthen the organization's role in contributing to democracy, security, and rule-based international order, including multilateralism. At the same time, we believe that the effectiveness of our actions depend on stronger coordination across the multilateral system. The Council of Europe's impact is amplified when aligned with other international organizations, particularly within the United Nations system, including the Human Rights Council and UNESCO. In an increasingly interconnected world, coherence between institutions is not optional, it is essential. The Council of Europe has stood for over 75 years as a pillar of democratic values. Today, those values are under pressure. From geopolitical shifts, from authoritarian tendencies, and from hybrid threats. Our response must be equally strong to ensure democratic stability, resilience, security, and development. These are not abstract concepts. They are lived realities for our citizens, for our institutions, and for the future of Europe. Each of our countries carries a responsibility not only individually, but collectively, to uphold and advance the values that unite us. During its presidency, the Republic of Moldova has consistently advocated for strengthening multilateral diplomacy. We believe it is empowered to build bridges, to foster trust, and to provide sustainable solutions to complex challenges. Multilateralism remains our strongest tool in defending democracy, protecting human rights, and ensuring that a rule-based order endures. The experience of the Republic of Moldova shows that democratic resilience, strong institutions, and courageous people can withstand even the most complex pressures. More than that, it can renew itself. It has been an honor to bring this perspective to our shared efforts. Let us continue together, not only to protect the Council of Europe, but to help shape its future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. It was very interesting and very substantial. Thanks a lot. I now remind colleagues that questions must be limited to 30 seconds. Colleagues should be asking only one single question and not making speeches. And we will start with the questions of the representatives of the political groups. And I first call Julian Josvik on behalf of SOC.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Dear Minister, thank you very much for coming here to Strasbourg and speak in front of the Council of Europe of our PACE Assembly. I would like to ask you to elaborate, please, on what you said on how your government is strengthening Moldova's resilience against Russian disinformation, hybrid threats, and what support are you expecting from the Council of Europe, from our Assembly, and what can maybe other European countries learn from your government from the experience you made in Moldova? Thank you.
Mr. Popsoy.
But I still need to press the button. The story of the Republic of Moldova is a story of resilience against the odds. It's a story of resistance against immense pressure against our democratic institutions. And it's a source of pride that our society was able to resist this pressure. And when I say our society, I really mean it. Because if it wasn't for the unity and solidarity of all our citizens, NGOs, independent media, only the effort of the state institutions would not have been enough. And we have witnessed how individual citizens were playing a role in making sure that illegal Russian money is not able to corrupt the Moldovan political system by bribing voters. Independent journalists uncovered those efforts by the Kremlin to hijack our democratic process by infusing illegal cash into our political process. And combined with an effort, with a significant effort from state institutions to prosecute those illegalities, but also given the incredible solidarity of the society as a whole, to stand united against these pressures coming from the Kremlin, resulted in a positive outcome, but we should not rest being assured that the battle is over. It is safe to say that this sort of pressure and interference will continue. That's why it is so important for the entire community of member states of the Council of Europe to contribute to this effort that is being carried out now within the Committee of Ministers and will be put for the discussion and for approval at the ministerial in Chisinau for a framework convention on combating foreign information manipulation and interference. To have such a framework, and given how well suited the Council of Europe is to present this document, not just to the member states, but to the international community, we very much hope that we'll be successful in reaching this consensus document so that other countries and other societies will be better prepared than Moldova was in combating this effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And now I call on Ionut Marian Stroh on behalf of EPP.
Thank you, Madam Chair. President, as you mentioned, in a period in which multilateralism is under strain and pressure, how can the Council of Europe reinforce its position as a standard setter or a geopolitical actor, particularly in relation with other international organizations? Thank you.
Thank you. The Council of Europe is one of the most vivid expressions of multilateralism. It's not only a creation of multilateralism, but it has become also a promoter of the values of multilateralism, initially at the European level, then gradually beyond Europe, and now at the international stage. As witnessed by the establishment of the mechanism to ensure accountability for Ukraine, the Claims Commission, the Special Tribunal for Ukraine, Council of Europe is shaping multilateralism and reaffirming its values for the rule-based international order. It is particularly relevant in these times when one can see more voices speaking in favor of power as the main enabler of actions in the international stage. It is also for this reason that the Committee of Ministers is working on the external action strategy of the Council of Europe. And as I've mentioned in my intervention on the impact of our organization, is maximized when there is a synergy and complementarity with other like-minded international organizations. The external action strategy aims, among other objectives, to intensify the global outreach of the Council of Europe standards in support of promotion of human rights, democracy, rule of law, and democratic security, particularly emphasizing its place in open conversations. This has paved the way for effectively entry points for enhancing cooperation with non-member states and other international organizations and expand the standard-setting activities beyond Europe's borders. Just let me briefly provide you an example. The Budapest Convention on Cybercrime is most obvious success story of the Council of Europe within 81 parties. The most recent conventions that are open to non-member states are the AI and Human Rights, Democracy and Rule of Law Convention, which is first ever international legally binding treaty in this field, and the new Council of Europe Convention on Protection of the Environment through Criminal Law is the first international legally binding instrument to address environmental crime, covering a broad range of criminal acts that aggravate the triple planetary crisis, climate change, pollution and biodiversity loss. It's not a coincidence, for instance, that the EU is a signatory to the latter two conventions, as I mentioned, or that countries such as Australia and Canada are parties to the Register of Damages for Ukraine. This demonstrates the relevance of the Council of Europe beyond the standard-setting authority and as a multilateral actor in Europe and beyond.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Christopher Job on behalf of ECPA.
Minister, thank you for leading by example in promoting the values of democracy. Can you assure us that the political declaration on migration, which is going to be made this May, will assert the rights of individual countries to take back control over their borders and give them the freedom to use expulsion to deter illegal entry? And if not, why not?
Mr. Popsai.
Thank you. As you may recall, as a result of the open letter of 9 member states that was calling for an open-minded conversation about the interpretation of the European Convention on Human Rights, the Secretary General decided to bring this issue for discussion within the framework of the Council of Europe and invited member states' ministers of justice to an informal ministerial conference on 10th of December in Strasbourg. The conference adopted conclusions in which they invited the Committee of Ministers to prepare a draft political declaration reaffirming the obligation to ensure the effective enjoyment of the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Convention to everyone within the jurisdiction of Member States in the context of the contemporary challenges posed both by irregular migration and the situation of foreigners convicted of serious offences, taking duly into account, in particular, governments' fundamental responsibility to ensure national security and public safety. Subsequently, the Committee of Ministers instructed the Steering Committee on Human Rights to prepare elements for a political declaration. The CDH submitted these elements to the Committee of Ministers for its consideration. Currently, the Ministers' deputies are finalizing a political declaration on issues related to migration and the European Convention on Human Rights to be adopted at the session of the Committee of Ministers in Chisinau in May. I would like to assure you that this work is guided by the need to respect the autonomy and the independence of the court. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Rob Wicks on behalf of ALDE.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Monsieur le Ministre, le monde est en train de basculer. Guerre, guerre d'invasion, guerre d'accaparement, peu importe le type, recul du droit international et implosion de ce que nous appelions encore récemment la communauté internationale. Dans ce contexte, votre pays est situé géographiquement et humainement sur une des lignes de fracture. Dans ce contexte, Monsieur le Ministre, la présidence Madame Sandu s'est récemment dite favorable à une réunification avec la Roumanie, membre de l'Union européenne. Une manière, je présume, d'affirmer son choix net et définitif pour une réintégration pleine et entière dans la famille européenne. Cette prise de position a-t-elle eu des répercussions dans le débat au sein même de votre pays? Et par ailleurs, je tenais à vous remercier pour avoir mis l'Ukraine au cœur de la présidence moldave. Merci.
Mr. Popsai.
Thank you. As I've mentioned during my previous intervention here, and as President Sandu mentioned when Her Excellency was here, The unification with Romania movement is part and parcel of Moldovan political discourse and has been so since Moldova's independence. For over 30 years now, it has been a constant feature in Moldovan political debates and in Moldovan elections. But at the same time, it is not an imminent issue on the political agenda of today. At the same time, we need to be aware of the historical, linguistic, cultural commonalities between the Republic of Moldova and Romania. About 1 million Moldovan citizens are also citizens of Romania. And in light of the very severe geopolitical circumstances in which we find ourselves in, we need to be reminded of our common past. But again, as I said, and as it was explained repeatedly back home, this is not necessarily an item on the immediate political agenda of political decisions in Chisinau today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Alessandra Maiorino on behalf of OEL.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In light of unprecedented sanctions imposed on UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese solely for their UN exercise mandate, how does the committee intend to safeguard the independence and integrity of international human rights system? And given the allegations of severe violations of international human rights law by Israel, including accusation of genocide, torture, apartheid, and illegal appropriation of Palestinian land, what concrete steps will you take to ensure that the organization's ongoing cooperation with Israel remains consistent with the Council of Europe standards and principles? Thank you.
Mr. Bobsoy.
Thank you. The Council of Europe and the UN are long-standing partners and share the priority of protecting and consolidating the universal human rights protection system in these challenging times. The standard-setting role and normative influence of the Council of Europe, as well as its fundamental human rights protection system, based on the European Convention of Human Rights and European Court of Human Rights, are widely recognized. As such, the Council of Europe is a regional actor with the opportunity and responsibility to maintain the universality of human rights and the respect of international law, including the UN Charter. It will spare no effort to intensify and consolidate its work and dialogue with the UN and other international actors in order to contribute to the resilience and integrity of the protection of human rights system. The Council of Europe has played a crucial role to ensure that neighboring countries become part of the common legal space, sharing values, standards, and protection systems of human rights. The organization will continue to pursue these goals when they are put at risk by geopolitical developments. Given the importance of these issues for the Council of Europe, we pay particular attention to relevant developments in the country you mentioned, in the context of the recent adoption of the law on death penalty in Israel and the occupied territories. Of the Committee of Ministers expressed deep concern over the legislative proposals which would expand the death penalty in Israel and calling on the authorities of Israel to abandon it.
So the questions will now be taken in groups of 3, and I recall 30 seconds, 1 question, no speech. And the first one is Monika Bartos from Hungary.
Mr. President, on March 13th, the Moldovan presidency organized a highly productive event on the protection of national minorities with OSCE experts. What lessons were learned from this, and how could this initiative be continued under future Committee of Ministers presidencies? Thank you for your answer.
Now Gökçe Gökçen from Turkey.
Thank you. Mr. Minister, I have already asked this question to you last session and you answered. Thank you for that. But there is no progress regarding the implementation of judgments of the European Court of Human Rights regarding Osman Kavala. My question is, does the Committee of Ministers discuss about this ongoing problem? Do you have a plan? Thank you.
And finally, Piera Fassino from Italy.
Grazie Ministro. La mia domanda è molto semplice. Dopo la vittoria elettorale e l'esito positivo pro-europeo del referendum, quali sono le politiche che voi state mettendo in campo per favorire e accelerare il processo di integrazione nell'Unione Europea?
Mr. Popshoy, please.
Thank you. The event you referred, Ms. Bardosh, was a side event organized on the margins of a 42nd biennial coordination group meeting between the Council of Europe and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe that took place in Strasbourg on March 13th. It was a joint initiative of the Moldovan presidency and the Committee of Ministers and the Swiss chairperson of the OSCE. It's the second time we are organizing a side event on the margins of the biennial coordination group meeting between Council of Europe and OSCE, the first being in October 2025 in Vienna on human trafficking. With the OSCE counterparts, we decided to continue this initiative, and we are very happy that we had this opportunity. On the occasion of the coordination group meeting in Moldovan presidency of the Committee of Ministers, in collaboration with the Swiss chairpersons of the OSCE, presented key trends and outlined ways for a renewed commitment between states of the Council of Europe and the OSCE to protect the rights of persons belonging to national minorities in the context of different challenges in different countries. Now, on the question of Ms. Gökçen, follow-up on European Court of Human Rights decision in Kavala. The Kavala case, the Committee of Ministers is faced with an exceptional situation where the application remains detained despite not only the court's initial judgment of May 2020 ordering his release, but also a second judgment of its Grand Chamber in infringing procedure under Article 46, paragraph 4 of the Convention. The committee follows this case at every ordinary and human rights meeting. At its recent meeting in March 2026, the committee again expressed its deepest concern that Mr. Kavala remains detained and that no tangible progress has yet been achieved despite the court's findings and the committee's numerous decisions. It therefore once again exhorted all the Turkish authorities to ensure Mr. Kavala's immediate release. As President of the Committee of Ministers, I can but repeat the call for Mr. Kavala's immediate release and absolutely insist that this call is respected. The ongoing dialogue must achieve results. There is no step more important for Mr. Kavala and the convention system. Thank you. And when it comes to Moldova's European integration path, Mr. Fasino, I can assure you, and you are very much welcome as a distinguished member of the committee, of the monitoring committee, to see the progress that the Republic of Moldova is doing, evidenced in the enlargement report published by the European Commission the beginning of the year, spelling out that the Republic of Moldova has made by far the biggest progress among all the candidate countries in the past year. We very much look forward to increase the momentum, the speed, but not at the expense of quality, as our friends in Brussels and in member states keep telling us. And indeed, it is our ethos to make sure that we consolidate democratic institutions and develop the competitiveness of the Moldovan economy so that we can be ready for membership. The reforms that we are doing back home are first and foremost driven by the craving of the Moldovan people to increase and improve the quality of life in Moldova today. The fact that it also helps us to advance towards European Union membership, it's great, but the driver is domestic. Moldovan citizens have waited for 30 years to embark on this path towards returning to the European family of nations. Now that we have this opportunity, we cannot afford to lose any more time. So we are undertaking the difficult reforms back home, and we are counting on the reciprocity of our friends in Brussels and in member states, bearing in mind the principle and the commitment and the promise that we made to each other of a merit-based accession process. We are certainly working hard to deliver on our commitments, and we are optimistic that our friends in member states and in Brussels will deliver on theirs. Because the enlargement of the European Union has always been a success story. There isn't a single country that has joined the European Union and is worse off now than it was before it joined. In fact, we have countries, all of the countries that joined have been a tremendous success. But in particular, if we look at countries like Ireland, that made a remarkable transformation to one of the most advanced countries with the highest GDP per capita. Poland is perhaps another amazing example of now reaching a status of a real economic and political powerhouse in Europe and in the world. The economic growth that our brothers in Romania have witnessed in the past decades since joining has been truly remarkable. So this is an investment in the peace and stability in Europe and in Europe's competitiveness as a whole, because every enlargement wave also improved the competitiveness of German companies, of Italian companies, of companies from Luxembourg, because they received new markets, they received new investment opportunities, and we very much look forward to be able to contribute towards this incredibly successful economic cooperation and peace project that is the European Union. Thank you.
Now 30 seconds for Albana Vokshi from Albania.
Thank you. Since the end of monitoring, Albania is on democratic backsliding. VDEM Institute classifies as electoral autocracy with concentration of power, election conducted under party state influenced by drug cartels and arrest of opposition leaders. No parliament oversight, wide systemic corruption, obstruction of accountability by socialist majority, refusals to lift immunity of high-level officials, included Deputy Prime Minister accused by SPAC on 11 corruption cases. How does the Committee of Ministers assess Albania's compliance with its obligation? Does it consider additional monitoring, including a return to full monitoring? Thank you.
Thank you. And Titus Kalatian from Romania.
Bine ați venit, domnule ministru, and congratulations for the good quality of the management of the Moldovan presidency. My question is related to the complex process of reintegration of the Transnistrian region that cannot be imagined without the democratization of this region. What tools and means can be used by the Council of Europe to support the Republic of Moldova in this process of reintegration, also through the democratization of the Transnistrian region, and also to ameliorate the deplorable situation of the respect of the human rights in this region? Thank you so much. Mulțumesc.
Thank you very much. And the third in this round is George Fox from UK.
Thank you. Minister, in your excellent speech, you mentioned the great work we're doing in support of Ukraine. What similar collective action do you think the Council of Europe and its agencies can do in terms of mitigating the terrible effects that the Middle East war is having on the citizens of our countries?
Thank you. And Mr. Popshay.
Thank you. The Parliamentary Assembly has developed its own procedures to review Member States' progress in fulfilling their obligations. It is not for the Committee of Ministers, and even less so for its President, to interfere in these proceedings. From its part, the Committee of Ministers has received several written requests from the Honourable Parliamentarian from Albania. It will respond to them in accordance with the rules of procedure. The Committee of Ministers expects all its 46 Member States to support the undertaken commitment as Member States of the Council of Europe. The expertise of the Council of Europe is at their disposal to support them in their reform process with a view to align legislation to practice with the European standards. Bine v-am găsit, domnule Corlățan. It's good to be here. When the moment of the reintegration will come, all Council of Europe instruments that were so useful and brought such important developments for the democratic consolidation of the Republic of Moldova could be applied as well to help identify the best solutions adapted to the specific situation of the reintegration process, as it will be considered at the moment. As for the human rights situation in the region, it is being constantly under the attention of the Moldovan authorities. inclusively in the context of the European Court of Human Rights judgments concerning the Russian Federation. Let me thus recall the Conference on the Execution of Judgments as part of the convention system that was organized in December 2025 as part of the Committee of Ministers Presidency of the Republic of Moldova, which also discussed the means to ensure the execution of these judgments with concern to human rights violations in the Transnistrian region of the Republic of Moldova, for which the Russian Federation was found responsible. Now, when it comes to the developments in the Middle East, the conflict unfolding in Iran, Israel, and across the Gulf has a far-reaching impact in the Middle East and beyond on the loss of civilian life and infrastructure, as well as on economic stability and energy supply. A ceasefire has been announced, but the ongoing closure of the Strait of Hormuz is greatly damaging the global economy. The developments in Iran and the wider region also threaten regional global security. International law, including the principles of the United Nations Charter and international humanitarian law, should be respected by all parties. The Committee of Ministers recalls that although the membership of the Council of Europe is limited to European countries and the organization has no direct responsibility or authority to resolve the conflict, this does not mean that it remains untouched and unaffected by the multiple consequences of the crisis in the Middle East and the regional instability generated. Among the consequences of the crisis, the rise of anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred in Europe also raises grave concerns. The Committee of Ministers is taking seriously the impact of the conflict on European societies. We deplore the alarming upsurge in anti-Semitic incidents in Europe since the beginning of the conflict, as well as manifestations of hatred and intolerance, including xenophobia and Islamophobia. The Committee of Ministers recalls to all Member States the revised general policy recommendations of the European Commission against Racism and Intolerance on prevention and combating anti-Muslim racism and discrimination, as well as on preventing and combating anti-Semitism, and encourage them to redouble their efforts to implement it. The Committee of Ministers stands in support of Member States close to the region and remains extremely vigilant in these issues to prevent the poison of hatred and racism from growing in our societies, as well as on other issues such as the potential impact of the crisis on Member States that are neighbors to the conflict area, such as migration. Thank you.
Thank you, and we start the last group of three questioning with Larissa Bilozir from Ukraine.
Minister Popshoy, the continuing presence of Russian troops in the Transnistria region of Moldova, along with estimated 20,000 tons of ammunition stored there, poses a persistent risk to our shared regional security. Therefore, Ukraine's southwestern flank, often seen as more potential dormant front, I would say, that can be used by Russia in the future. How does Moldova assess this risk today, and what concrete steps can be taken to prevent destabilization and ensure security in this sensitive area?
Thank you. And now we listen to Armen Gerovian from Armenia.
Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, Azerbaijan has banned the activities of important international humanitarian organizations, in particular International Committee of the Red Cross, making objective information about Armenian prisoners in Baku extremely limited. Azerbaijan is also disregarding decisions of international courts, including those of the European Court of Human Rights on this matter. Despite the fact that the Azerbaijani delegation is not present in this hemicycle, the country continues to bear obligations towards this organization. In this regard, I would like to ask, what steps will Committee of Ministers take to ensure Azerbaijan's compliance with international humanitarian law? Thank you.
And finally, Andrian Cheptononar from the Republic of Moldova.
Mr. Minister, the Russian Federation was expelled from the Council of Europe in March 2022. Waging a full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine is against the core values of the Council of Europe, and Russia's exclusion was the only possible decision in this context. Though Russia ceased also to be part of the European Convention on Human Rights, it has a binding legal obligation to implement judgments and decisions from the court. In this context, Mr. Minister, could you tell us how the Committee of Ministers is ensuring the supervision of the execution of judgments against Russian Federation? Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Popsa, in case you are quick, we also can take the last two on the speaking list.
Well, first on Madam Belozier's question, I would first take the opportunity to yet again thank our Ukrainian friends and neighbors for the incredible sacrifice they are making for keeping not just their country safe, but also the Republic of Moldova, and in fact, all of us, in light of the incredible sacrifice that they are making daily. When it comes to the Transnistrian issue and the risks that it poses, I would emphasize the fact that since the Russian annexation of Crimea, 2014, there hasn't been any rotation of the illegal Russian military presence in the Transnistrian region of Moldova. So the roughly 1,200 Russian personnel there, which we often cite and reference, it's not exactly reflective of the reality anymore, since not having been able to rotate for over a decade now, the number of actual Russian soldiers in the Transnistrian region has decreased dramatically. So it's literally a couple hundred left. The rest are being recruited from within the region, including from among Moldovan citizens. And since last year, the Moldovan authorities have taken decisive actions to discourage this practice by withdrawing citizenship to those who are serving, if that is the right word, in the illegal Russian military presence in the Transnistrian region of the Republic of Moldova. This should act as a significant deterrent for any other Moldovan citizen who would consider to earn a living this way. There are plenty of jobs in the Republic of Moldova. In fact, we are struggling with not enough labor force in Moldova. So serving in the illegal Russian military presence is highly problematic, to say the least. So these actions will hopefully and most definitely serve as a deterrent when it comes to this particular situation. So, and the same goes for the over 20,000 tons of ammunition that are often cited in this context. Those stockpiles have also been depleted over time because the illegal Russian troops, but also the so-called Transnistrian military, has used those stockpiles throughout the years. So the numbers have decreased to a significant degree as well. But of course, it is incumbent on us, as the international community and Moldovan authorities first and foremost, to create the fertile ground and to build a strong international coalition to nudge the Russian Federation into withdrawing its troops and munitions from the Republic of Moldova as they committed themselves under the OSCE Istanbul Summit of 1999. And of course, we'll continue to work tirelessly in that direction. Now on the question of Mr. Gevorgyan. Indeed, further to the decision taken by our Assembly in January 2024 not to ratify the credentials of the Azerbaijani delegation, this delegation is no longer present in our Assembly. This is regrettable, and I hope a solution will be found. Azerbaijan is a full-fledged member of the organization, entitled to the same rights and as any other member, while, of course, having the same obligations in terms of commitment to the Council of Europe standards. Accordingly, all persons under the jurisdiction of Azerbaijan continue to enjoy the protection afforded by the instruments of the Council of Europe, and in particular the European Convention of Human Rights. The safeguards guaranteed by the Convention apply to all individuals imprisoned in the country, including Armenian prisoners who continue to have access to the European Court of Human Rights. Let me conclude by recalling that peace and stability in the Caucasus region are of key importance for the Council of Europe as a whole. I'm looking forward to the day that the peace agreement is finally ratified. And it's certainly in these very turbulent times that we are living, it's a sign of hope when we are seeing the normalization process in the Caucasus between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now, when it comes to the question of Mr. Keptonar, the Russian Federation ceased to be a high contracting party of the Convention on 16 September 2022. But it remains bound by the obligations under the Convention, including in implementing the judgments of the Court. The Committee of Ministers continues to supervise the execution of the judgments against Russia, but it's a challenging task since Russia's authorities have seized all communication with the Committee. The Committee deplored the continued lack of cooperation on the Russian authorities' side. It also strongly urged the Russian Federation to comply with their obligations under the international law and the Convention to fully abide by the court's judgments, including by paying the just satisfaction along with the interest accrued, also in the interstate and interstate related cases. The committee has reacted in flexible and innovative ways to ensure that it can still cast a light on the situation in these cases pending against the Russian Federation. The committee decided to bring its decisions in cases against the Russian Federation to the attention of other relevant international organizations such as the UN to increase pressure on that state. Under the Moldovan presidency on the 12th of December, in Chisinau, the International Conference on the European Convention System and Execution of Judgments on the European Court of Human Rights was organized. The event also tackled possible avenues under international law aimed at securing the payment by Russia to just satisfaction awarded by the court in these cases, including in conflict-related cases and in interstate cases. In 2025, the committee examined for the first time 2 interstate cases against Russia. The first of them was Ukraine versus Russia, regarding Crimea, concerning numerous violations stemming from the occupation of Crimea by the Russian Federation. The second case was the historic judgment Ukraine and the Netherlands versus Russia, finding multiple human rights violations that occurred in the context of the conflict in Ukraine since 2024 and following the full-scale invasion from February 2022, including the downing of the flight MH17 in July 2014 and the killing of all on board. The committee invited member states to explore all possible means to ensure execution of these judgments. Thank you.
Okay, then we managed the last 2 as well. Thank you very much, Lisa Jasko. But you also have to insert your badge to speak.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Dear Minister, my question will be very short. Moldova has been quite successful in fighting Russian propaganda and banning pro-Russian parties. And could you please share your lessons from that and what can be done more? And what lessons can you share to other members of this assembly and in other countries who also want to find Russian propaganda in their countries? Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one is Benjamin Dalle from Belgium.
Prime Minister, in view of the political declaration of Chisinau, it is essential that the Committee of Ministers fully respects the independence of the European Court of Human Rights. References to so-called innovative solutions on migration, such as third country procedures or return hubs, must be clearly framed and compliant with international law, including non-refoulement and access to asylum procedures. How will the committee ensure that these concepts are precisely defined and aligned with convention standards? Thank you.
Mr. Bobshay.
Thank you. On the question of Ms. Jasko, the challenges of Russian propaganda have become clear by now, I think, to every member of this assembly and to all the states of the Council of Europe. But the intensity of the propaganda and the tools that are being used vary from one country to another. Moldova has this dubious honor of being the petri dish of Russian propaganda, where they've tried every tactic in the book in the hope of seeing which one works in order to take them on the road and apply them in your member countries. Moldovan society has resisted and continues to resist this hybrid warfare that we are enduring. But we have also learned that you have not only the right, but the obligation, and I'm actually quoting here a member of the Venice Commission who told us as much, that we have not just the right, but the obligation to defend democracy. Because if we stand idle, hoping that things will somehow work out, that democratic institutions will somehow magically be able to defend themselves against these hybrid warfare tactics, this is not the case. If there isn't clear political will to engage, but also, very importantly, to engage in defending democracy while not overstepping and not getting carried away, because the temptation can be quite high sometimes. But we have managed, and call me biased, but I think we've managed in Moldova to make sure that we defend our institutions. And there have been some cases where political parties have been banned by the courts, but not because they are pro-Russian or anti-Russian, but because they clearly violated Moldovan legislation, particularly when it comes to campaign finance. When you have politicians running around with cash, distributing this cash to voters, this is not democracy anymore. When you have illegal cash coming from the Kremlin into Moldova to bribe and provide funding to anybody who would take it, in fact, to undermine Moldovan democracy, to hijack Moldova's European future, that is not a level playing field. But of course, you need to take action within the democratic system, and we've done our utmost to make sure that we defend this against this interference, while always being reminded of the values that we have been voted to defend, the democratic rights and freedoms of our citizens. And that is why it's so important, and I've mentioned it earlier, that we find the common ground to agree on a framework convention on FIMI, so that every country has a basic starting point from where to not only inform its society, but also the means to defend its society against interference from wherever it comes from. So this is an important element in our agenda. When it comes to the question about the migration issue and the independence of the court, I've mentioned that extensively in one of the previous answers. It's a very delicate balance again, just like between this proverbial debate between liberty and security, which is highly consequential. The same can be applied here between independence in the court and the rights of the countries to decide their migration policy. We will do our utmost to make sure that we provide the level playing field to reach a reasonable compromise in the declaration, and the experts have been working hard to reach precisely that consensus. We are now on the final stretch to agree on this declaration to be adopted at the ministerial in Chisinau, bearing in mind at the same time the concerns of the countries that face these challenges when it comes to migration, but also bearing in mind the paramount principle of the independence of the court. Thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I want to thank you very much for answering our questions this afternoon, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, and I wish you a very positive and successful conclusion of the Moldovan presidency. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, the next item on the agenda is the continuation of the debate on the report titled Violence and Hate Speech Against Politicians, a Threat to Democracy, presented by Ms. Elisabetta Gardini on behalf of the Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy, with an opinion by Ms. Yevgenia Kravchuk on behalf of the Committee on Equality and Non-Discrimination. And I remind you, colleagues, that speaking time is limited to 2 minutes. And we have to conclude the debate at 5:25 p.m., so I propose to interrupt the list of speakers at about 5 p.m. to allow time for the reply and the vote. So now we continue. I call next Ms. Walilewska to have the floor. You have the floor. Is Ms. Walilewska not here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Across Council of Europe member states, elected representatives from local councillors to national leaders face rising threats, intimidation, verbal abuse, physical attacks, online harassment, and dehumanizing rhetoric. Countless officials endure daily hostility that drives self-censorship, altered decisions, reduced public engagement, and withdrawals from politics. This especially deters women, minorities, and youth, eroding diverse representation and trust in institutions. When this happens, our political systems become less inclusive and less representative of the societies they serve. European leaders reaffirmed their commitment to protecting democratic participation through the Reykjavik Principles for Democracy. These principles remind us that political life must remain free from violence, harassment, hate speech, and discrimination. However, commitments alone are not enough. We must also strengthen our ability to understand and address this growing phenomenon. For this reason, I welcome the recommendation of the Parliamentary Assembly to establish a Council of Europe platform or observatory dedicated to monitoring threats and violence against politicians at local, regional, and national levels. Such a mechanism will play an important role in collecting and analyzing information on incidents of violence. By identifying patterns and trends, it would help us better understand the scale of the problem and develop more effective prevention and response strategies. It would also raise awareness across member states and encourage cooperation in protecting those who serve in public office. Protecting politicians from violence is not only about protecting individuals. It is about protecting democracy itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Bilosia. You have the floor.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I would like to thank the rapporteur, Madam Elisabetta Gardini, for a very timely report, and my colleague Yevgenia Kravchuk for her opinion. As violence and hate speech against politicians is no longer abstract, it is daily reality across all Europe. Online and offline threats, harassment, intimidation, release of private information. In my case, follow me to find out my place of living and public release by journalists with Russian link of my address, where I live and where my children live. It is important to mention that 71% of parliamentarians report experiencing violence. Thousands of cases are reported every year across Europe. Behind every number is a person, someone who considers to step down. It silences violence voices. It pushes people out of politics. And that is the goal, to weaken democratic representation. We must be clear about the causes. Polarization, the normalization of hate speech. Yes, we need stronger laws. Yes, we need protection, but protection is not enough. We must defend respect of political debate. We must reject hate as political tool. Dear colleagues, let me turn to Ukraine. For us, this issue goes further. Violence and hate speech are not only internal challenges, they are fueled from outside. Russia uses disinformation, deepfakes, coordinated hate campaigns, and cyber attacks. This is Russian strategy. The goal is to destroy trust and weaken the state that threatens the statehood itself. Ukraine is living proof that violence against politicians can be used as a tool of hybrid warfare. Colleagues, every politician must be able to work without fear, because when politicians are silenced, citizens lose their voices. And when citizens lose their voices, democracy loses its meaning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Bikic. You have the floor. Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, as a social democrat from Sweden, I came from the political tradition that has seen the worst consequences of political hate. Our Prime Minister Olof Palme was murdered. Our Foreign Minister Anna Lindh was killed. You and your family should be 2 meters underground, not in Parliament. This is the message I receive. So this debate is not abstract for me. I know what it means to receive threats and hate, not only as a politician, but also someone who came to Sweden as a refugee. This is not only personal, it's an attack on democracy. The goal is to silence. And when people in politics start to hold back and stay quiet, something is already broken. If we accept this is normal, we must ask, who will step forward next? Who will take this role if their family become a target? This is why we must act. Yes, we need stronger laws, we need better protection, but we also need responsibility as politicians. Hate grows in the climate of polarization and us and them. We all share responsibility for that. And I know that politicians on the right also face hate. And I stand with you against that. Because this is not an issue about left or right. It's about defending democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now it's Ms. Jasko. You have the floor, please.
Dear colleagues, when we had discussion in our committee, it was very interesting to hear that almost each of us has quite crazy stories of the hate against us, against politicians. Some of us have it more, some of us have less. And I also want to share just my entrance to politics that happened 7 years ago and the way how I actually encountered hate speech at that moment. So it happened to me during the first months of being a member of the parliament, and at that time I was appointed as the head of our delegation to the Council of Europe, and there were huge media attention on me. And then suddenly there were a lot of hate and fake photos saying that I'm a lesbian, or I am having very strange relationships with Soros. I was called a Soros agent. They also were searching for information about my family, and my father is a musician, so they found that he played 15 years ago Tchaikovsky music, and I was called a traitor. Most of us know what does it mean to be under huge security threats, not only verbal, but also physical. And this is very hard. But I want to address today all the people who are actually wanting to enter the politics. Please don't wait that politics will be very pleasant to you. I don't think that to any of us the politics brings so much pleasure and joy. It's a huge hard work, and as my colleague here, Albana, said today, the challenge is not to enter the politics, but actually to stay in politics. Meantime, you have so much of the threats against you. But if you find that purpose and the courage and the leadership, you should continue. So my congratulations to the rapporteur.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Gevorkian. You have the floor.
Dear colleagues, this document is largely driven by the growing radicalization of political discourse in Europe. However, for a number of states, including my own, this issue has a broader dimension. It is directly linked to the functioning of democratic institutions and the relationship between ruling majority and the rest of society. The violence is unacceptable in any form. However, ignoring its root causes makes efforts to combat it ineffective. When public rhetoric of ruling parties and its leaders is dominated by aggression, intolerance, and dehumanization of opponents, this inevitably shapes society and creates an environment of confrontation. Holding a majority often perceived as a license for permissiveness, but not a greater responsibility for upholding pluralism, ensuring fair political competition, and respecting opponents. If it is not reality, then checks and balances are weakened, and the space for politically correct and rational dialogue is reduced. The political struggle moves behind democratic procedures. Therefore, when discussing the protection of politicians from violence, we must also speak about protecting democracy itself from the abuse of power and irresponsible political rhetoric. For instance, the framing by the ruling majority in my country of the election campaign in the spirit of "if not we, then war" creates an atmosphere of hopelessness and the lack of real democratic choice. Such a way of communication raises internal aggression, increases societal division, and brings new portion of hatred. It leads to the democratic degradation and the loss of trust in institutions. Mr. Chairman, it is crucial to focus on holding the ruling politicians accountable for their words and actions. Only then we will be able to truly strengthen democracy rather than merely addressing its shortcomings. Thank you.
Thank you. And I call the next speaker. It's Mr. Tan. You have the floor. If Mr. Tan is not...
Mr. President, democracy is built on shared commitment to dialogue, pluralism, and mutual respect. When these principles are undermined, democracy is placed at risk. We are witnessing an alarming rise in threats, harassment, and violence directed at politicians, from physical assaults and intimidation to pervasive spread of hate speech and incitement online. This trend has far-reaching consequences. First, it creates a climate of fear. When politicians are subjected to threats and abuse, their ability to serve freely and effectively is compromised. Second, it erodes public trust. When political debate is reduced to hostility and personal attacks, citizens lose confidence in democratic institutions. Third, and most fundamentally, it undermines the rule of law. Briefly, violence and hate speech are not democratic expressions. They are direct violations of them. In addressing this challenge, we must uphold fundamental rights and avoid any measures that could unduly restrict legitimate expression. Political leadership is equally vital. As public figures, our words matter. The language used in political debate can either foster a culture of respect or fuel discrimination and hostility. Finally, we must reaffirm a simple but powerful truth. Disagreement is not enmity. In a true democracy, opposing views are not threats to be silenced, but contributions to be debated. Dear colleagues, protecting politicians from violence and hate speech is not about shielding individuals from criticism. It's about safeguarding our democratic space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Ms. Bastos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, colleagues, my first words to congratulate the rapporteur, Ms. Gardini, for the clarity and relevance of this report, and also congratulate the rapporteur for opinion. Political violence is not something new to our time. History reminds us of this. John Kennedy was shot dead in the year 1963 before the eyes of the world. Olof Palme, Prime Minister of Sweden, was assassinated in the year 1986 while walking home from the cinema in a country that believed itself protected from such violence. Today, however, the threat often begins long before any physical attack. It begins when insult replaces argument, when political opponents are treated as enemies, and when intimidation becomes normalized. The answer to violence and hate speech against politicians requires effective laws, serious investigation, accountability from digital platforms and civic education, but it also requires a more demanding political culture. In Portugal, my country, we recently had a regrettable case. A candidate for Parliament during the national elections waited outside the family home of the Prime Minister and the candidate, staging an offensive and provocative confrontation for social media. Politicians must be agents of good example, not the authors of intimidation, hostility, or public humiliation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Mr. Brabandere.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, violence against politicians and political participation is not some abstract threat. It is a daily reality, and it is right that we are discussing it here today. But I do have to say this plainly, the hypocrisy of the left on this issue is simply staggering. I come from Brussels. And what do we see there? A pattern of cooperation between violent far-left activist groups and the local left-wing government. Time and time again, we see the same script. Left-wing street militias, so-called Antifa, they threaten peaceful gatherings of people with different views. And then the mayors use this as a pretext to ban those same gatherings. In practice, that means fundamental rights, like the freedom of speech and the freedom of assembly, are being crushed. And the hypocrisy goes even further, ladies and gentlemen. It is out in the open. I am referring to what happened in the European Parliament in the case of the Italian terrorist Ilaria Salis. This woman was suspected of being involved with the so-called Hammer Gang, a hammer gang that was attacking innocent people with hammers. You can call that what it is attempted murder. And what did we see? In a secret vote, it was ensured that her immunity was not lifted and that she did not face the trial that she deserved. This was done by her partners, or the same people here who are going to go agreeing with this report. So yes, it is right that political violence is raised here today, but please stop the horrible hypocrisy.
And the next speaker is Ms. Vasilenko. Ms. Vasilenko is not here. Okay, then we move on to Mr. Silva Santiago. You have the floor.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, la violence et les discours de haine à l'encontre des responsables politiques représentent aujourd'hui une menace réelle pour la démocratie européenne. Si ceux qui choisissent de servir l'intérêt public le font de la peur, de menaces, des agressions ou de représailles, alors c'est la démocratie elle-même qui s'en trouve fragilisée. Ce phénomène n'est ni isolé ni marginal. Il est en progression, il traverse toutes les spectres politiques, il touche tous les niveaux de gouvernance. Ses conséquences sont profondes. Autocensure, éloignement des citoyens, abandon de la vie politique et affaiblissement du pluralisme. Une démocratie dans laquelle les citoyens ont peur de participer cesse d'être pleinement démocratique. Nous devons également reconnaître les causes, la polarisation croissante, la dégradation du débat public et le rôle amplificateur des réseaux sociaux, où la haine et la discrimination se propagent rapidement. Mais comprendre n'est pas accepter. La réponse doit être claire. Tolérance zéro face à la violence, toujours dans le respect de la liberté d'expression. C'est pourquoi je soutiens ce projet de résolution. Il va dans la bonne direction. Renforcement de la protection des responsables politiques, lutte contre les abus online et les contenus manipulés, et investissement dans l'éducation civique. Mais il y a un point essentiel, notre propre responsabilité. En tant que responsables politiques, nous devons montrer l'exemple, rejeter tout le langage incendiaire et condamner systématiquement la violence, quelle que soit la victime. Chers collègues, protéger les responsables politiques, c'est protéger la démocratie. Et protéger la démocratie, c'est garantir un débat libre, pluraliste et sans peur. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Ms. Novica. You have the floor.
Mr. President, violence and hate speech against us, politicians, is a rapidly growing pathology of our political and public life. Many of us, if not all, have been badly attacked, some people even killed. In Poland, President of Gdańsk, Paweł Adamowicz, was murdered at the stage during the final ceremony organized by the most successful Polish charity foundation, which yearly collects millions to support medical purposes. Extremely violent and hateful campaign that has been carried out against female member of parliament, Magdalena Felix, led her son to tragic act. He committed the suicide. Danuta Jazłowiecka, who is sitting right there, former member of the European Parliament, was one of 6 members of the European Parliament whose pictures were hanging on the gallows. Women fighting for women's rights, including right to abortion, myself included, had our pictures next to Adolf Hitler pictures on billboards carried out all over the country. Violence and hate speech is a systemic form of political war of blocking progressive changes, such as the recognition of rights of discriminated communities, including LGBTI, religious and national minorities, and women. Democracy, although not perfect, it's still the best political system that has been developed by the humankind, is not immune to hate speech, violence, and horrific acts. We need to do more as soon as possible to protect ourselves against this very pathology of our political life. We need to be proactive and start with early education at schools for peace. We have to agree that freedom of expression, if it hurts anybody, is a violation of individual rights and a weapon of war, not the human right of the oppressor. I call of zero tolerance.
Thank you. And the last speaker will be Madame Vienne. You have the floor.
Chers collègues, Monsieur le Président, c'est un honneur et un privilège pour la délégation canadienne d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. La question débattue est importante car elle touche chacune et chacun d'entre nous au sein de cette enceinte et concerne bien sûr plus largement la santé de nos démocraties. Le Canada n'y échappe pas. Par exemple, selon les responsables de la sécurité de la Chambre des communes, le harcèlement subi par les parlementaires de la part du public a augmenté de près de 800% au cours des 5 dernières années seulement. Cette tendance illustre clairement que la montée des menaces et de l'intimidation envers les élus n'épargne aucune démocratie. La hausse des violences envers les responsables politiques affectent leur bien-être psychologique et bien sûr aussi la qualité de la vie publique. Au Québec, au niveau local, plus de 1000 élus municipaux, maires, mairesses, conseillers, conseillères ont quitté leurs fonctions entre 2021 et 2025. Les démissionnaires ont invoqué un climat difficile et le manque de respect du public parmi les facteurs ayant motivé leurs décisions. Sur un autre palier, au cours des dernières années, plusieurs députés fédéraux ont quitté la vie politique. Récemment, l'une d'entre elles a attribué cette décision aux menaces misogynes constantes et au harcèlement dont elle était la victime. Protéger l'intégrité physique et psychologique de nos élus n'est pas seulement une exigence institutionnelle, c'est une condition fondamentale pour garantir une représentation diversifiée et bien sûr à l'image de nos sociétés. Pour conclure, un mot sur les femmes. Je suis extrêmement inquiète de la sécurité des femmes qui doivent toujours être en hypervigilance, sachant qu'une femme est assassinée à toutes les 48 heures au Canada et que malheureusement, nous en sommes déjà à 9 présumés féminicides au Québec depuis le début de l'année seulement. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I now must interrupt the list of speakers, but the speeches of members on the speakers list who have been present during debate but not have been able to speak may be given these speeches to the table office for publication in the official report. They must not exceed 400 words, and I remind you, colleagues, that the typewritten text can be submitted electronically, if possible, no later than 4 hours after the list of speakers is interrupted. And I would now call on Ms. Gardini, the rapporteur, to reply. You have 3 minutes.
Sì, grazie Presidente. Io voglio veramente soffermarmi per ringraziare tutti i colleghi che sono intervenuti, anche quelli che non sono intervenuti e hanno partecipato al lavoro, ma è stato particolarmente bello ascoltarli oggi perché c'è stata una sorta di idem sentire da tutti i lati dell'emiciclo. Abbiamo sentito stesse parole, stesse esperienze condivise, una serie di testimonianze personali, anche dolorose, molti hanno portato anche dei dati che confermano che il problema c'è, il fenomeno esiste, il fenomeno è in crescita e sta veramente danneggiando la nostra democrazia. Mi ha colpito l'esperienza della giovane collega rumena che ha parlato di questi giovani che si presentavano, quasi tutti i giovani che si presentavano per la prima volta alla vita politica e che sono stati attaccati, tant'è che questo li ha bloccati e molti si sono ritirati. Ma a prescindere dalla nostra appartenenza, quindi questo fenomeno riguarda veramente tutti. E io sono fermamente convinta che il nostro lavoro ribadisca alcuni punti centrali che vorrei qui ricordare. Dobbiamo rinnovare innanzitutto il contratto sociale con i cittadini attraverso iniziative che coinvolgano l'intera società e che garantiscano protezione alle vittime, prevengano gli abusi e ripristinino il riconoscimento dovuto a chi dedica tempo e impegno alla vita pubblica a qualunque livello. È importante il ruolo dei partiti perché i partiti devono dare l'esempio, i politici stessi devono dare l'esempio, rispettando i propri pari, condannando ogni forma di violenza, specialmente quando perpetrata contro colleghi di partiti diversi. Questo è un altro punto che tengo a sottolineare. Così come vorrei sottolineare quello che il rapporto chiede al Comitato dei Ministri, chiede che prenda in considerazione la creazione di un meccanismo per identificare e monitorare le minacce e gli episodi di violenza contro i politici a livello locale, regionale e nazionale. Questo meccanismo potrebbe davvero prendere la forma di una piattaforma o di un osservatorio del Consiglio d'Europa e ci aiuterebbe a comprendere meglio, a prevenire e a reagire con più efficacia a questo fenomeno. D'altronde questa proposta è la stessa che è stata avanzata il 1° di aprile dal Congresso dei poteri locali e regionali. Questo è particolarmente importante perché gli eletti a livello locale sono spesso tra i primi e i più esposti bersagli. Cari colleghi, qualsiasi attacco violento contro un rappresentante politico è un attacco alla democrazia stessa, lo ribadisco perché l'avete ribadito tutti voi con forza. Vi invito quindi a sostenere l'adozione della risoluzione e della raccomandazione e sebbene spesso non ci troviamo d'accordo su altre questioni, credo che qui invece siamo compatti e potremo dare una testimonianza perché ne va proprio della salute della nostra democrazia.
Thank you very much. Does the Vice Chairperson of the committee wish to have the word? You have 3 minutes.
Grazie Presidente e grazie colleghi. A nome della Commissione per gli Affari Politici e la Democrazia voglio rivolgere dei ringraziamenti alla relatrice Elisabetta Gardini, alla onorevole Kravchuk, che è la relatrice per parere della Commissione EGA. Però è un grazie sincero a tutti i vostri contributi. Io credo che il dibattito che è avvenuto attorno a questo rapporto sia stato un dibattito estremamente qualificante per la nostra Assemblea, sicuramente sincero e che ci ha visti uniti in una condanna unanime contro la violenza nei confronti di chi è incaricato, eletto per rappresentare i propri concittadini. Per noi questa è una discussione che a mio parere è vitale perché contribuisce a dare una forma al futuro delle nostre democrazie e chiama la nostra Assemblea ad una responsabilità, quella di assumere una posizione forte e decisa contro la violenza nei confronti dei politici. Molti lo hanno sottolineato durante il dibattito, la violenza non può appartenere alla parola democrazia. E la violenza contro i politici, qualunque forma essa assuma, rappresenta un attacco diretto a tutto ciò in cui crediamo, a tutto ciò che ci unisce. Abbiamo diritto di avere le nostre opinioni, abbiamo diritto di difenderle, abbiamo diritto di discuterne in modo anche molto appassionato e acceso. Non possiamo negarlo, così come non possiamo e non dobbiamo negare il diritto di ciascun individuo ad esprimere le proprie opinioni, perché questo è il cibo delle nostre democrazie. Però la libertà di espressione si ferma se c'è incitazione all'odio o alla violenza. E noi abbiamo l'obbligo morale e l'obbligo politico di garantire che i politici a tutti i livelli siano protetti dalla violenza verbale e fisica, online e offline. È fondamentale questo perché permette a noi e ai nostri colleghi di dedicare tutte le nostre migliori energie al servizio dei nostri concittadini, senza avere paura. Ed è importante anche perché dobbiamo garantire che tutti possano sentirsi al sicuro nel momento in cui decidono di impegnarsi in politica, indipendentemente dal loro background. La democrazia è veramente tale se tutte le voci vengono ascoltate nei limiti del rispetto reciproco e come politici siamo chiamati a dare l'esempio. Ecco perché concludo questo mio intervento con un appello finale a tutti noi. Adottiamo questo testo come un messaggio di forza, di unità e di impegno, che questa Assemblea si posizioni con fermezza nella condanna di ogni forma di violenza contro i politici, a tutti i livelli e di ogni appartenenza politica. Grazie.
Thank you very much. And now the debate is closed and we go to consideration of amendments. The Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy has presented a draft resolution to which 16 amendments have been tabled and a draft recommendation to which no amendments have been tabled. They will be taken in the order in which they appear in the compendium, and I remind you that speeches on amendments are limited to 30 seconds. Any amendment which has been unanimously approved by the committee seized for report shall not be put to a vote in the plenary and shall be declared as definitively approved unless 10 or more members of the Assembly object. And I understand that the Vice Chairperson of the committee wishes to propose to the Assembly that amendments 11, 13, 8, 3, 14 and 15 to the draft resolution, which were unanimously approved by the committee, be declared as definitively approved. Amendment 10 was also unanimously approved, but has 3 sub-amendments, so it will not be subject to this procedure. But is this correct, Ms. Bergamini? Yes.
Correct.
That is correct. Thank you. So if no one objects, I will consider the amendments to be approved. Is there any objection? There is not. So amendments 11, 13, 8, 3, 14 and 15 to the draft resolution are therefore approved and will not be called. I understand that the chairperson of the committee wishes to propose to the Assembly that amendments 6 and 7 to the draft resolution, which were rejected by the committee with a 2/3 majority, be declared as definitively rejected. You can just nod, Ms. Bergamini, you are right. Yes, thank you. So if no one objects, I will consider the amendments to be rejected. Is there any objection? It's not the case. Yeah. So amendments 6 and 7 to the draft resolution are therefore rejected and will not be called. Then we go to amendment number 12, and I call on Ms. Kravchuk to support amendment 12. You have 30 seconds.
Chair, this is an amendment that was approved and proposed by the Equality Committee, and basically it proposes to replace the word homophobic with the following word, LGBTI-phobic, which is a broader term, and we believe it would reflect all of the community. And besides, it was mentioned in the explanatory memorandum this term, so it could be wise to have it in resolution as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Yevgenia. And is anybody want to speak against this amendment? Okay, what is the opinion of the committee?
Was approved.
So the committee is in favor, and I will now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. So now the vote is closed, and I call for the result to be displayed. So the Amendment 12 is agreed to. We now turn to Amendment number 4, and I have to recall that Amendment 5 will fall if this amendment is adopted. I call Ms. Fernandez now to support Amendment 4. You have 30 seconds.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le paragraphe 8 fait référence au mouvement populiste, terme à notre sens trop vague, et nous pensons qu'il convient d'être plus précis plutôt que de mélanger des phénomènes différents. Il s'agit de nommer ce qui est pourtant établi. En effet, notre Assemblée a déjà identifié en 2023, dans le cadre du rapport numéro 2511, adopté le 11 octobre 2023, le fait que l'extrême droite a un rôle spécifique dans la montée des violences, dans la diffusion de discours extrémistes et dans l'attaque de responsables élus. C'est le sens de cet amendement. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Anybody wants to speak against this amendment? What is the opinion of the committee? Oh, you have the floor.
This is a ridiculous amendment. It's just totally one-sided. The fact is, we all know there is far-right and far-left hate, but just to attack the so-called far-right is just ludicrous. We should oppose this amendment.
And what is the opinion of the committee?
Was rejected.
So the committee is against, and I'll put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. And I now close the vote. The vote is closed, and I call for the result to be displayed. And the Amendment 4 is rejected. We now turn to Amendment number 5.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Dans le même sens, il s'agit d'un amendement de lucidité minimale. Je l'ai dit, en 2023, notre Assemblée a elle-même acté le fait que la violence d'extrême droite avait fortement augmenté en Europe et que les attaques contre les représentants élus montraient le danger croissant de cette mouvance d'extrême droite. Dès lors, constater que les discours haineux se normalisent sans préciser qui, dans plusieurs États, contribue puissamment à cette banalisation, eh bien, c'est resté en deçà de ce que notre Assemblée a d'ores et déjà reconnu en 2023.
I now call for anyone to speak against this amendment. Yes, you have the floor.
It's the same argument. You know, it's totally one-sided. We rejected it last time. Just reject this. Really, the far left need to get their act together. Stop being so blinkered. Hate comes from the far right and the far left. Just grow up for once.
And what is the opinion of the committee?
Was rejected.
So the committee is against, and I'll put it to the vote. The vote is open. And now I close the vote. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. And this amendment is rejected. And we now go to amendment number 6. Sorry, we go to amendment number 1. And I will call on Mr. Goncharenko to support amendment number 1.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, this is an amendment about unfortunate events which are happening. It's about violence against politicians organized by foreign states. In this case, we're speaking about Russia organizing extraterritorial hunt for politicians and trying to kill them. Unfortunately, we have many examples of this hunt, and even the Speaker of Ukrainian Parliament, an incumbent member of Ukrainian Parliament, was killed last year. So I think it is very important when we are speaking about violence against politicians to name different origins and sources of this violence. So I ask you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody who wants to speak against the amendment? What is the opinion of the committee?
The committee rejected this amendment.
So the committee is against, and I put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. And I now close the vote. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. It's rejected. Thank you, and I now turn to amendment number 2, and that's also Mr. Goncharenko.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. This amendment already mentions the concrete case of Mr. Andrei Parubi, who was here in our assembly, who was speaking from this tribune, who was killed in cold blood by assassin who was found and prepared and coordinated by Russian intelligence service. And I think we need to mention such things in order to prevent these things to happen again. And only thanks to Ukrainian counterintelligence service, there is not many more victims of Russian hunt against politicians, which can be Ukrainian, but can be anybody else. So I think it is very important to add this to the report. Please support. Thank you.
And do anybody wish to speak against the amendment? What is the opinion of the committee?
Rejected this amendment.
So the committee is against. I now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. I now close the vote. The vote is closed, and I ask for the result. The amendment is rejected. And we now go to amendment number 10, and I understand there is an oral sub-amendment proposed to amendment 10. I first call Mr. Sobolyev to support amendment 10. You have 30 seconds.
It's a technical amendment. It was supported unanimously, and we agree to have this amendment as the separate chapter. Thank you.
I have been informed by the committee of the following oral sub-amendment. In Amendment 10, replace the words in paragraph 21 after the words where appropriate, insert the following words with after paragraph 21, insert the following paragraph. The effect of this would be to insert the text as a new paragraph after paragraph 21 rather than forming part of paragraph 2.1. So it will have its own paragraph. So that's the idea. It will have its own paragraph. In my opinion, this sub-amendment is in order under our rules. However, do 10 or more members reject to that? Is anybody objecting? No. So that's not the case. I call on the rapporteur to support the sub-amendment on behalf of the committee. And the rapporteur supports.
Yes, I support.
Does anyone want to speak against? That's not the case. And we know that Mr. Sobolyev is in favor. He said that already. So the committee is in favor of the sub-amendment. So is the Mr. Sobolyev. So I now put it to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result, and the sub-amendment is agreed to. And now we come to the main amendment 10 as sub-amendment. Does anyone want to speak against this? No. So what is the opinion of the committee?
Approved.
You are in favor, and now I put it to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed, and I call for the results. It is agreed to. So now we move to amendment number 9, and I call Mr. Fernandes to support amendment 9. You have 30 seconds.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Cet amendement vise à réaffirmer une réalité fondamentale de fonctionnement démocratique. Certes, nous devons promouvoir le dialogue entre les partis ainsi qu'une culture politique fondée sur la transparence, le respect et la responsabilité. Nous devons condamner sans ambiguïté, et nous le faisons, la violence et les discours de haine, mais cela ne signifie pas que le débat démocratique doit être aseptisé ou réduit à un consensus artificiel. En ajoutant que le débat peut légitimement être conflictuel et fondé sur des désaccords politiques profonds, nous rappelons que le pluralisme implique la confrontation des idées, mais certes sans violence et sans haine, évidemment. Merci à vous.
Does anybody want to speak against this amendment? What is the opinion of the committee?
The committee rejected this amendment.
The committee is against. I now put it to the vote. The vote is open. I now close the vote. The vote is closed. I call for the results. The amendment is rejected. And we now go to amendment number 16, and that is an amendment to the title of the draft resolution to amend the title of the report, and I call Mr. Goncharenko to support amendment 16. Alexei, you have the...
Thank you. I think that report should be called about what it is said in this, and this is report about violence against politicians, which is super important. I want to thank rapporteur for the job was done, but it's about violence, and which should be prevented and stopped. And I think it is important that the text of the report in resolution will have its understanding from the title. So I propose to delete the following words and hate speech, and to leave violence against politicians a threat to democracy. Thank you.
Does anybody want to speak against the amendment? Mr. Cotin.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je pense que cet amendement est dangereux parce que si tous les discours de haine ne conduisent pas automatiquement à la violence, toute violence commence dans un discours de haine. Et donc on doit déjà agir, et c'est d'ailleurs ce qui est très bien décrit dans le rapport et dans le reste de la résolution. Et pour que le titre soit cohérent par rapport au reste de la résolution, je pense que nous devons laisser le titre initial.
What is the opinion of the committee?
The committee approved this amendment.
So the committee is in favor, and I will put the amendment to the vote. Sorry? 16. And once again, what is the opinion of the committee?
And 16, the committee approved this amendment.
So the committee is in favor of the amendment. The vote is now open. Okay. I now close the vote and call for the result. The amendment is rejected. And now we will proceed to vote on the draft resolution as a whole contained in document 16336, and we need a simple majority. The vote is open. And I now close the vote. The vote is closed. I call for the results. And the draft resolution is adopted. Thank you. And we will now proceed to vote on the draft recommendation contained in the document, and a 2/3 majority is required here. The vote is open. And I now close the vote and call for the results, and the draft recommendation is adopted. Thank you very much. And now, colleagues, the next debate is countering discrimination based on religion and protecting freedom of religion or belief in Europe. And we just need to have a shift on the bench before we can start. Dear colleagues, the next item of business is the debate on the report titled Countering Discrimination Based on Religion and Protecting Freedom of Religion or Belief in Europe, presented by Mr. Francesco Verducci on behalf of the Committee on Equality and Non-Discrimination. In order to finish by 7:15 p.m., I will interrupt the list of speakers at about 7 p.m. to allow time for the reply and the vote. And I will now call on Mr. Verducci, the rapporteur. You have 7 minutes now and 3 minutes at the end to reply to the debate. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cari colleghi, tutti devono poter avere il diritto di credere o di non credere e di vivere liberi e uguali nella pienezza del proprio essere. Eppure per moltissime persone oggi non è così, anche nei nostri paesi del Consiglio d'Europa, e questo è un tema politico dirimente che riguarda le nostre democrazie. Tra le cause dell'intolleranza religiosa, la principale è la guerra. Il nostro tempo, di nuovo, è segnato da eventi traumatici. Il febbraio del 2022, l'aggressione criminale della Russia contro l'Ucraina, il 7 ottobre del 2023, il pogrom di Hamas contro la popolazione israeliana e poi la reazione devastante del governo Netanyahu, la distruzione di Gaza, la catastrofe del popolo palestinese, un tempo di guerra che viola diritto internazionale e diritto umanitario e con essi rischia di travolgere lo Stato di diritto, che è il pilastro di ogni libertà religiosa. Al giorno d'oggi forme pericolose di nazionalismo tornano ad agitare strumentalmente il fuoco dei conflitti religiosi, dello scontro tra culture, avvelenando l'opinione pubblica con la paura ossessiva dell'altro, e la discriminazione religiosa è la violazione dei diritti umani, oggi più diffusa al mondo, spesso si sovrappone ad altre forme di discriminazione, alle diseguaglianze e alle disparità sociali e sempre, in ogni sua forma, si alimenta di pregiudizi, di stereotipi e si caratterizza come forma di discriminazione razziale. Per questo, innanzitutto, dobbiamo affermare che il modo più efficace e strutturale per riconoscere e sconfiggere le discriminazioni religiose in ogni loro forma è contrastare ogni forma di discriminazione, ogni retorica dell'odio, ogni colpo contro le minoranze, contro tutte le minoranze. Questa battaglia riguarda tutti, riguarda la qualità della nostra democrazia, riguarda la civile convivenza, dunque tutta la nostra società. Le scritte antisemite che ricompaiono sui muri delle nostre città ci riguardano tutti. Sono un rigurgito inquietante del tempo infame che fu il fascismo, il nazismo, così come il fatto che possa essere pericoloso per le persone ebree vivere liberamente, per i bambini andare a scuola o in sinagoga, per un adulto indossare la kippah. Crescono in questo tempo, anche se in forme diverse, antisemitismo, islamofobia, discriminazione nei confronti dei cristiani laddove essi sono minoranza, restrizioni del credo che sono una violazione personale, ed è questo, tutto questo, l'oggetto di questa nostra risoluzione. Per preparare questo testo ho svolto una visita nel Regno Unito e mi ha molto colpito il racconto dei fatti di Southport tra fine luglio e inizio agosto del 2024, gli assalti e le violenze contro la comunità islamica, quando a seguito dell'omicidio di 3 ragazze, gruppi di estrema destra diffusero la notizia falsa che attribuiva la colpa a un richiedente asilo musulmano. Ecco, voglio citare questo episodio, Presidente, perché richiama una rappresentazione spesso distorta, alimentata dai media, e per porre con forza il tema della responsabilità e della correttezza del discorso pubblico. In preparazione di questo rapporto, Marco Ganci, l'osservatore permanente della Santa Sede presso il Consiglio d'Europa, mi ha consegnato una frase che voglio condividere con questa Assemblea: evitare il rischio di limitare indebitamente la libertà di religione. E quindi voglio aggiungere costruire, avere il dovere di costruire una società inclusiva, dove la libertà di ognuno non conculca mai la libertà di un altro, dove la libertà è tale perché rispetta il principio di non discriminazione, il principio di dignità di ognuno, che molto spesso sta proprio nell'espressione della libertà religiosa. C'è una responsabilità speciale per ognuno che ricopre ruoli pubblici, contrastare linguaggi discriminatori e manipolatori, contrastare l'uso politico strumentale della religione, che è uno di questi linguaggi manipolatori, l'uso improprio della religione per alimentare stereotipi e pregiudizi, per stigmatizzare individui o gruppi sociali, per ottenere vantaggi elettorali. Questo avviene a un prezzo insostenibile per le nostre democrazie. Per questo, Presidente, voglio concludere rilanciando la proposta e l'obiettivo di istituire una piattaforma permanente, stabile, formalmente riconosciuta per il dialogo interreligioso, interconfessionale all'interno del Consiglio d'Europa, per sconfiggere le paure molto spesso alimentate ad arte dalla cattiva politica o da faccendieri che utilizzano gli algoritmi e le nuove tecnologie per monetizzare l'odio, ma lo fanno ai danni delle nostre democrazie, e questa è una grande questione politica. E, Presidente, questo nostro lavoro, che è durato 2 anni e che ha coinvolto molti colleghi che voglio ringraziare, così come voglio ringraziare il segretariato della Commissione per il sostegno, ecco, questo nostro lavoro penso possa contribuire non solo ai lavori di questa nostra Assemblea, ma all'urgenza, spesso anche drammatica, del tempo che viviamo, e ai lavori anche dell'obiettivo del nuovo patto per la democrazia, che è oggi uno dei termini principali del lavoro di questa organizzazione del Consiglio d'Europa, che ancora oggi, tra 1000 difficoltà, è presa a riferimento da tantissimi che credono nella democrazia, nello Stato di diritto, nell'eguaglianza, nell'emancipazione, e che vedono nel proprio diritto all'autodeterminazione, alla libertà religiosa, qualcosa di insopprimibile, fondamentale, che è dovere di tutti noi tutelare e sostenere. Grazie Presidente, grazie colleghi.
Thank you very much, Francesco. As I now open the general discussion, I remind you that the time limit for spokespersons for political groups is 3 minutes. For everyone else, it's 2 minutes. And in the debate, I now call Ms. Jekyll from the ECPA. You have the floor.
Vielen Dank, Herr Präsident, werte Kollegen. Ja, wir sprechen heute über ein Dokument, das vorgeht, Diskriminierung zu bekämpfen, aber gleichzeitig Gefahr läuft, gewachsene Strukturen und bewährte Modelle in Europa zu untergraben. Ja, Bildung ist der Schlüssel. Das wird auch in diesem Bericht betont, und das unterstützen wir ausdrücklich. Aber genau dort, wo es konkret wird, beginnt das Problem. Denn wenn gefordert wird, religiöse Bildung müsse objektiv und nicht konfessionell sein, dann ist das kein Fortschritt, sondern ein Eingriff in gewachsene Bildungssysteme. Und ich sage es ganz klar, ein Religionsunterricht ohne Bekenntnis ist kein Religionsunterricht mehr. Er ist eine theoretische Auseinandersetzung ohne Wertefundament. Gerade der konfessionelle Unterricht, wie wir ihn in Österreich kennen, vermittelt nicht nur Wissen, sondern auch Haltung, Verantwortung und Respekt. Denn wer einen eigenen Standpunkt hat, der ist überhaupt erst fähig zum Dialog. Wer alles relativiert, schafft keine Toleranz, sondern Orientierungslosigkeit. Hier geht es nicht nur um Bildung, es geht um ein Grundrecht. Die Religionsfreiheit, verankert in Artikel 9 der Europäischen Menschenrechtskonvention, verpflichtet Staaten nicht nur dazu, sich zurückzuhalten, sondern auch dazu, dieses Recht aktiv zu schützen. Dazu gehört auch das Recht der Eltern, über die religiöse Erziehung ihrer Kinder zu entscheiden. Wenn aber konfessioneller Unterricht zurückgedrängt wird, dann wird genau dieses Recht in der Praxis geschwächt. Wenn wir über Diskriminierung sprechen, dann muss sie konsequent und ohne Unterschied bekämpft werden. Ein Beispiel dafür ist die Situation vieler Christen in Europa, die zunehmend mit Angriffen auf Gotteshäuser, Vandalismus und Einschränkung ihrer öffentlichen Glaubensäußerung konfrontiert sind. Wenn wir Diskriminierung als Problem ernst nehmen, dann dürfen wir hier nicht wegsehen. Und noch etwas. Dieses Dokument zeigt ein Spannungsfeld, das es selbst nicht auflöst. Einerseits soll Religion im Bildungsbereich stärker neutralisiert werden. Andererseits fordert man mehr Raum für Religionsausübung im Alltag. Ja, was denn nun? Hier fehlt eine klare und kohärente Linie. Da sage ich ganz klar, Europa braucht keine Einheitslösungen von oben. Europa braucht Respekt vor den gewachsenen Systemen seiner Mitgliedstaaten. Und es braucht die Freiheit, Religion zu leben, zu lehren und zu vertreten, ohne unnötige staatliche Eingriffe. Unser österreichisches Modell zeigt, Vielfalt und Zusammenhalt schließen einander nicht aus. Und genau deshalb lehnen wir Vorgaben ab, die funktionierende Strukturen schwächen, ohne die angesprochenen Probleme tatsächlich zu lösen. Danke.
Thank you. And now for the next speaker, Mr. Oberhofer. You have the floor.
Should work? Now. Sehr geehrte Frau Kollegin, Religionsfreiheit, das ist kein bequemes Wohlfühlthema, sondern es ist ein Stresstest. Und zwar ein Stresstest, den wir tagtäglich mitmachen. Sie zwingt uns, Widersprüche auszuhalten. Vielfalt versus Zusammenhalt. Individuelle Freiheit versus gemeinsame Regeln. Heute möchte ich hier Klartext sprechen. Jeder Mensch hat Recht zu glauben oder eben nicht zu glauben. Dieses Recht steht über politischen Ideologen, über Mehrheiten und vor allem über Stimmungen. Aber hören wir auf, uns etwas vorzumachen. Religionsfreiheit ist eben kein Freibrief. Wer in Europa lebt, wer hier seinen Glauben ausübt, steht auf dem Boden unserer gemeinsamen Werte. Demokratie, Rechtsstaatlichkeit, Gleichberechtigung, Menschenrechte. Ich sage deshalb ganz klar, keine Religion steht über der Verfassung. Keine Tradition rechtfertigt Einschränkungen von Freiheit. Kulturelle Praxisen dürfen keine Grundrechte relativieren. Das ist keine Provokation, das ist ein Fundament Europas. Und genau hier entscheidet sich unsere Zukunft. Nicht in abstrakten Diskussionen, sondern in der Schule, in den Klassenzimmern unserer Kinder. Dort, wo junge Menschen sich entwickeln, lernen, wer sie sind, dort, wo sie merken, was sie verbindet. Deshalb braucht Europa heute den Mut und eine klare Ansage, nämlich für einen verpflichtenden Ethikunterricht. Und zwar für alle Schülerinnen und Schüler ohne Ausnahme. Ein Raum, in dem nicht getrennt wird, sondern zusammengeführt wird. Ein Raum, in dem junge Menschen lernen, dass Freiheit auch Verantwortung heißt. Wenn wir diese gemeinsame Basis nicht schaffen, dann überlassen wir das Feld jenen, die spalten. Gleichzeitig sage ich aber auch Ja zum konfessionellen, freiwilligen Religionsunterricht. Nicht in einem Hinterzimmer, nicht außerhalb unserer Ordnung. Freiwilliger, religiöser, konfessioneller Religionsunterricht hat in einem staatlichen Rahmen und vor allem im Klassenzimmer stattzufinden. Nicht um den Glauben einzuschränken, sondern um ihn zu schützen. Denn ein Glaube, der im Widerspruch zu Freiheit, Gleichberechtigung und Menschenwürde steht, ist kein Beitrag zu Europa. Er ist eine Gefahr für unsere Gesellschaft. Religionsfreiheit bedeutet nicht, Konflikte zu vermeiden. Religionsfreiheit bedeutet, sie auszuhalten und klar zu zeigen, wo Grenzen verlaufen. Europa ist stark, wenn es frei ist, aber bleibt nur frei, wenn es sich seiner Werte sicher ist. Danke für die Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you very much. And now the next speaker is Mr. Fernandes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chers collègues, je tiens d'abord à remercier le rapporteur pour la grande qualité de son travail extrêmement documenté et qui revêt une importance particulière dans un contexte où les discriminations fondées sur la religion connaissent un accroissement quasi exponentiel, non seulement dans nos États membres, mais, il faut bien le dire, et s'en alarmer, sur l'ensemble de la planète. Les discriminations, qu'elles soient religieuses ou non, fracturent nos sociétés et nos démocraties et fragilisent le vivre ensemble. Elles augmentent à mesure que progresse l'extrême droite et l'accession au pouvoir de responsables eux-mêmes porteurs du concept fallacieux de choc des civilisations, amplifient la progression des haines interreligieuses. Combattre ces discriminations et celles et ceux qui en font un fondement de leur logiciel politique doit donc être une priorité pour notre Assemblée et pour l'ensemble de nos États membres. Nous soutenons pleinement les orientations émises dans le projet de résolution. La prévention, l'éducation dès le plus jeune âge, ainsi que la formation tout au long de la vie sont des outils indispensables pour déconstruire les préjugés et lutter durablement contre la haine. Cela passe aussi par les médias. En France, 9 personnes possèdent 90% de la presse. Parmi elles, Vincent Bolloré, qui utilise ces médias pour véhiculer des discours islamophobes. Le 29 janvier, sur la chaîne CNews, média de l'Empire Bolloré, une élue locale affirmait que les attaques au couteau relevaient d'un caractère culturel lié à l'islam. Ces propos participent à la banalisation des discriminations. Lutter contre les discriminations, c'est aussi lutter contre le capitalisme et ses conglomérats médiatiques qui promeuvent la haine. Nous devons également mieux analyser les discriminations grâce à une approche intersectionnelle. Les discriminations religieuses se conjuguent souvent à d'autres traitements inégalitaires. Les femmes, par exemple, sont particulièrement exposées, tout comme les LGBTQIA+, ou les personnes en situation de handicap. Les discriminations religieuses s'entremêlent avec le patriarcat, la LGBT-phobie et le validisme. Aussi, si l'islamophobie prend de plus en plus d'ampleur en Europe comme dans le monde, l'antisémitisme demeure une discrimination persistante. La mémoire est une clé essentielle pour combattre cette haine et il est temps de mettre en place de véritables politiques publiques de lutte contre ces discriminations. De même, il est tout aussi important de ne pas les instrumentaliser. S'opposer à la politique du gouvernement génocidaire israélien ne saurait être assimilé à une position antisémite. Enfin, nous devons nous doter d'institutions efficaces. En France, la défenseure des droits constitue un outil utile pour lutter contre les discriminations et garantir l'accès aux droits. Ce type d'institution existe dans de nombreux pays membres et nous prônons leur généralisation à condition qu'elles soient indépendantes, dotées de moyens suffisants et connues des citoyens. Lutter contre les discriminations fondées sur la religion, c'est défendre la libre conscience. C'est une responsabilité collective que nous devons pleinement assumer et c'est pourquoi mon groupe votera en faveur de l'adoption de ce texte. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Giannagnoli. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Francesco Verducci for the thorough and balanced work carried out on the basis of a motion I submit, which took its cue from a global campaign called BePure.org to implement an international treaty to prevent the political abuse of religion, cited in the report, which I hope may reach the United Nations. Religious freedom is one of those fundamental rights on a par with freedom of thought and conscience, as recognized by Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights. In 2015, a report was adopted against discrimination and intolerance towards Christians, and in 2022, 2 further reports addressed anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. There are 2 great enemies of tolerance and religious freedom: ignorance and malicious political propaganda. The first creates the ground on which the second easily takes root. It is therefore welcome that the resolution gives a key role to education to prevent stereotypes and distortions. I would like to highlight in particular the following point. Provide religious literacy training for public officials, law enforcement officers, and the judiciary, and provide teachers in school with training and guidance on religion based on a pluralist and inclusive approach with a view to fostering respect, mutual understanding, and preventing conflicts. Religious identity is one of the deepest aspects of the human person. We must therefore do everything possible to allow its expression in daily life. This, however, also means that the aforementioned identity must allow the expression of others and that tolerance must be bidirectional. towards believers and from believers towards everyone else. The true principles just recalled must also apply to those who are not believers, atheists, agnostics, and humanists. But the first people who must refrain from using discriminatory and hateful language are political leaders. While it is true that being able to freely affirm one's faith, even in a political sphere, is a right to be defended, this is not the case when the political discourse becomes discrimination against the religion of others, or the supremacism of one's own religion over the rest of the world. How can we fail to mention in this context a disturbing novelty, the American schism? It seems we are witnessing a new medieval struggle between Guelph and Ghibellines. Emperor Trump, who seeks the role of anointed by the Lord, who attacks the Pope and reminds him of the Avignon captivity, and who evokes the end of a civilization that, however, corresponds also with a faction of Islam, namely the Iranian Shiite one. How can we fail to mention the supremacism words of some minister of the Israeli government who would like to justify an action that no longer has the legitimate contours of defending one state, but rather of occupying another's land, justifying direction by what is written in the Bible, using intolerable violence against communities that, again, belong to other religions. I have finished. At other times, it has been Islamic political leaders who use inflammatory and hateful language and rhetoric. Religiously framed rhetoric is among the most dangerous. Once again, thank you to the rapporteur for this timely report.
Thank you. And next speaker on behalf of the EPP, Mrs. Andrea Eder-Gitzlacher. There.
You spoke it right. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Niemand soll aufgrund seiner Zugehörigkeit zu einer Religionsgemeinschaft oder auch weil er keiner Religionsgemeinschaft angehört, diskriminiert werden. Das ist ein wichtiger Grundsatz und von uns allen natürlich zu unterstützen. Daher ist dieser Bericht ja auch so wichtig und notwendig. Vielen Dank an den Berichterstatter für 2 Jahre Arbeit. Wir haben ja auch im Ausschuss miteinander gearbeitet. Es ist auch festzuhalten, dass das Recht zur religiösen Bildung und Erziehung durch Artikel 8 der Europäischen Menschenrechtskonvention und des Zusatzprotokolls grundsätzlich den Eltern zusteht. Und daher würde es der Menschenrechtskonvention widersprechen, den konfessionellen Religionsunterricht einer grundsätzlichen Absage zu erteilen, weil im Rahmen der Religionsfreiheit Artikel 9 Menschenrechtskonvention sowie der Meinungsfreiheit Artikel 10 Menschenrechtskonvention ausdrücklich auch der Unterricht als Teil der Freiheitsrechte garantiert ist. Ich meine, dass Eltern, die ihre Kinder konfessionsgebunden religiös erziehen, diesen ein wichtiges Instrument zur Führung eines gelungenen Lebens und einer positiven Teilhabe an der Gesellschaft geben können. Und dieser konfessionelle Religionsunterricht kann einen wichtigen Beitrag zur Entfaltung von Kindern in einer demokratischen und in den Menschenrechten verpflichtenden Ordnung leisten. Und konfessionelle Schulen sind gerade bei uns in Österreich eine wichtige Bildungseinrichtung, auch offen für alle. Daher war es uns ja so wichtig, als IPP in diesem vorliegenden Bericht zu betonen, dass religiöse Bildung, Erziehung einen wichtigen Beitrag zu einer demokratischen Gesellschaft leistet und das auch klar anzuführen. Und dass damit die Religionsgemeinschaften eine große Verantwortung haben in der Weitergabe ihres Glaubens und damit auch Achtung und Respekt vor anderen Religionen und religiösen Erzeugungen vermitteln. Und dafür Sorge tragen, dass die religiöse Bildung, Erziehung einen Beitrag zum friedlichen Zusammenleben und gesellschaftlichen Zusammenhalt leistet. Ich bedanke mich daher nochmals ausdrücklich für die Aufnahme unserer Ergänzungen in den Antrag und nochmals beim Berichterstatter für die geleistete Arbeit. Wir haben alle ja ein gemeinsames Ziel, unser Zusammenleben bestmöglichst zu gestalten, wertschätzend, ohne jegliche Form von Abwertung und Diskriminierung. Vielen Dank für Ihre Unterstützung.
Thank you, Madam. And then we go to the list of speakers who will be started by Mr. Georgios Stamatis.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me to speak in Greek. Ο πιο γνωστός ποιητής, ο Όμηρος, πιο γνωστός ποιητής στον κόσμο. Ο Όμηρος είχε πει ότι όλοι έχουν ανάγκη τους θεούς και ότι οι θεοί γνωρίζουν τα πάντα. Αυτό που δεν γνωρίζουν πολλοί άνθρωποι είναι ότι πρέπει να έχουν δικαίωμα όλοι οι άνθρωποι στη θρησκευτική ελευθερία. Η θρησκευτική ελευθερία είναι πυλώνας της δημοκρατίας. Και νομίζω ότι η Ευρώπη, οι χώρες μας έχουν πάρα πολύ καλά παραδείγματα που έχουμε τη συνύπαρξη χριστιανών, Εβραίων, μουσουλμάνων, αλλά και ανθρώπων που δεν πιστεύουν στο Θεό. Ποτέ δεν πρέπει να ξεχνάμε και αυτούς, ότι η θρησκευτική ελευθερία έχει να κάνει και με τους ανθρώπους που δεν πιστεύουν στο Θεό. Νομίζω ότι αυτή η έκθεση του συναδέλφου του κυρίου Βερντούτσι είναι όχι μόνο σε σωστή κατεύθυνση, αλλά δείχνει και τους άξονες που θέλουμε να πάμε την επόμενη μέρα. Η εκπαίδευση είναι πάρα πολύ σημαντικό. Όταν ξεκινάς να εκπαιδεύεις τους νέους πολίτες του αύριο, τους νέους ηγέτες του αύριο, με σεβασμό στη διαφορετικότητα, με σεβασμό στη θρησκευτική ελευθερία του διπλανού. Και νομίζω ότι είναι πολύ σημαντικό, κυρίες και κύριοι συνάδελφοι, να ανατρέξουμε στο ψήφισμα των Ηνωμένων Εθνών, στο ψήφισμα 16-18, που δείχνει και τον ρόλο των τοπικών κοινωνιών, των δήμων, πώς μέσα από εκεί, μέσα από τα συμβούλια που μπορούν να συμμετέχουν άνθρωποι από όλες τις κοινότητες, οι ηγεσίες αυτών των ανθρώπων, μπορούμε να έχουμε αυτό που πραγματικά θέλουμε, θρησκευτική ελευθερία. Και ταυτόχρονα βέβαια θα πρέπει να είμαστε και πολύ αυστηροί όταν εμφανίζονται ηγέτες δογμάτων, θρησκειών που δεν έχουν την νομιμοποίηση ως φυσικοί ηγέτες και προσπαθούν να δημιουργήσουν προβλήματα. Κάτι που πολλές φορές συμβαίνει στην Ελλάδα με τη μουσουλμανική μειονότητα. Αυτό που θέλουμε είναι ελευθερία. Και όταν έχουμε ελευθερία και δημοκρατία θα έχουμε και θρησκευτική ελευθερία. Σας ευχαριστώ.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Sam Rushworth. Mr. Please.
Thank you. And I welcome this report and the recommendations that it makes around education, political leadership and combating hate speech to protect people's freedom of religion or belief across Europe. Earlier, on the other side, Sir Christopher Chope argued against curbing hate speech in the name of free speech, saying people shouldn't be wimps. I disagree. People are free to criticise, blaspheme and mock religious beliefs and practices. This is not hate speech. Hate speech is when language targets people to stereotype, discriminate, exclude, threaten and legitimise violence towards them. As a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a minority Christian denomination, I grew up facing misconceptions and prejudice that I had to shake off. But I've never feared for my physical safety, unlike many other Christians around the world. And I realised how significant that is when I visited a Jewish shul in London and had to pass through airport-style security to get in. I remember what it must feel like to grow up needing that protection. In recent years, attacks on synagogues and Jewish organisations in the UK have increased, and Jewish communities are facing vandalism, threats and violence, often linked to conflicts far beyond their control. At the same time, Islamophobia is rising, and what is especially concerning is that it's not coming from the fringes, it's being legitimised by senior politicians on the political right. When politicians describe Muslim prayer as an act of domination, or suggest that visible expressions of faith are inherently threatening or incompatible with British life, as the leader of the official opposition did recently, that language filters down. It fosters suspicion and paints ordinary people as threats. And when a Reform Party MP claims that London, one of the world's most safe and vibrant cities, is, quote, under the control of Islamists, it goes even further, spreading fear and division based on falsehoods. It's the kind of rhetoric that stokes tension between communities for political gain. And so I congratulate Francesco and I welcome his report, which I will vote for.
And next speaker, Ivanka Vasilevska.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues. Today I stand before you to address a topic that lies at the very heart of democratic societies, countering discrimination based on religion and protecting freedom of religion and belief in Europe. Europe has long been recognized as a region committed to human rights, diversity and inclusion. The protection of freedom of religion or belief is not only a moral obligation, but also a legal one, embedded in a strong and multi-layered framework. At the core of this framework stands the European Convention on Human Rights, particularly Article 9, which guarantees every individual the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This includes the right to practice and express one's beliefs openly or privately. Complementing this is the European Union Charter of Fundamental Rights, where Article 10 and 21 ensure both the freedom of religion and strict protection against discrimination. Turning to my home country, the Constitution ensures equality regardless of religious belief and explicitly protects the freedom to express faith. The law on prevention and protection against discrimination, adopted in 2020, clearly prohibits discrimination based on religion in all areas of life, including education, employment, and access to services. Furthermore, the legal framework allows religious communities to register and operate freely, guaranteeing them rights and recognition. Several institutions are tasked with protecting these rights. The Commission for Prevention and Protection Against Discrimination handles complaints and promotes equality. The Ombudsman safeguards citizens against violation by state authorities, while the Commission for Relations with Religious Communities fosters cooperation and dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, protecting freedom of religion and belief is not only about laws and institutions, it is about building a culture of respect. Thank you.
And after we have Larisa Bilotzir, please.
Madam President.
Sorry, I skipped one. Sorry. I'm very sorry. Armen Gevorgian is first, and then Larisa, please.
Madam Chair, this debate is not abstract specifically for my country. For more than 1 year, representatives of the Armenian Apostolic Church have been subjected to politically motivated criminal proceedings, often justified by the claims that the Church has no right to engage in public or political discourse. Religious leaders under pressure for speaking on behalf of their faithful, including on issues about Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh that have been subjected to ethnic cleansing, and where Armenian religious and cultural heritage is at serious risk of full destruction. And on the top of all, the electoral program of the ruling party explicitly includes a roadmap to remove the Catholicos of all Armenians, which means direct interference in the internal life of a religious organization. The draft resolution reaffirms that religious communities have the right to organize themselves freely and to express their views publicly without interference. It is a binding legal standard under Article 9 of the Convention, alongside with the understanding that autonomy of religious organizations is a cornerstone of a democratic society. In Armenia, religion is being actively used by authorities in political discourse, portrayed as a potential threat and associated with external forces. This creates a situation where religion is both instrumentalized for political purposes and subjected to the attempts of institutional control by Armenian ruling party. In other words, both prohibitions outlined in this resolution are being violated in Armenia right now. Dear colleagues, to be democratic means to uphold a fundamental balance, where religion must not be used as a political tool and political power must not subordinate religion. This is precisely what this resolution seeks to prevent. If the Council of Europe remains silent about such practices in Armenia, it will confirm that today there are more double standards than standards. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Mrs. Larisa Bilotzir.
Distinguished colleagues, I thank the rapporteur, Mr. Venduce, for this important report. Freedom of religion or belief is a fundamental right. And today, in the context of Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, it is under direct attack. Russia uses religion as a tool of control. It is clear the Moscow Patriarchate acts as an instrument of state ideology, promoting so-called Ruski Mir in support of aggression. Since 2014, in occupied parts of Donetsk and Lugansk, hundreds of religious communities have been closed. Greek Catholics, Protestants, Muslim, Jewish communities, all have been facing repression, seizure of the places of worship, and systematic pressure. Only structures loyal to Moscow were allowed to operate freely. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, this repression has been accompanied by destruction. Hundreds of churches, mosques, synagogues have been damaged or destroyed by shelling and drone attacks. Priests, pastors have been killed, abducted, or persecuted for staying with their communities and refusing to cooperate with occupation authorities. At the same time, religion is being used to justify war. Putin presents war of aggression against Ukraine as a holy mission. This shows clearly religion is being weaponized by Russia. Dear colleagues, freedom of religion must be protected, but it cannot be used to justify war, to silence people or to destroy diversity. If we truly stand on this freedom, we must defend it not only in the words but in action. Because in Ukraine today, we are not only fighting for our land, we are fighting for the right to believe freely. And that is a fight that concerns us, all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kate Ozamor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for calling me. I stand in support of this very timely report by our rapporteur. Freedom of religion or belief is one of the most fundamental commitments shared across the Council of Europe. Yet we continue to see individuals and communities facing discrimination, exclusion and hostility because of their faith or because they choose to not follow any faith. These challenges require not only our concern, but our collective leadership. Across Europe, we are seeing worrying examples of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. But alongside these challenges, there are also encouraging examples of resilience and solidarity. In several member states, interfaith councils have brought together Jewish, Muslim, Christians and non-religious organisations to respond jointly to hate incidents. Local communities have organised open door days of places of worship to build understanding. Schools and youth groups have launched programmes that teach respect for different beliefs and encourage dialogue rather than division. These initiatives show that when communities stand together, prejudice loses its power. Our responsibility is to ensure that such positive efforts are supported by local public policy. Member States must continue improving the reporting and investigation of hate-motivated incidents. It is our job to keep all of our communities safe. Colleagues, Europe's strength lies in its ability to embrace diversity while defending shared values. By countering discrimination based on religion and supporting freedom of religion or belief for all, we reinforce the foundations of our democratic societies. Let us continue working together so that every person in Europe can live according to their conscience, without fear, without discrimination, and with full dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Edward Lai. Please.
Thank you, Madam President. Of course, we all believe in freedom of religion. I personally, and none of us here, would attack any person's religious belief. Nobody would do something so outrageous as to burn the Quran or anything like that, or to criticise Islam. But having said that, we have to fight for freedom of expression. And the truth is that I'm a Catholic. The overwhelming prejudice, martyrdoms, attacks on people around the world are because they are Christian. And people feel it, even in the West, perfectly socially proper to poke fun at Christianity, do cartoons in a way that they wouldn't dare to attack other religions. But I mean, I take it in good heart, and I do not believe that we should use the law to regulate free speech. Now, I just want to support my colleague here sitting in front of me, Sandra Jackal from Austria. It's very important that we don't think that the state has a right to impose some sort of relative dogma on religious education and on faith schools. I'm a Catholic, as I said, but I work on behalf of Orthodox Jews and their very literal interpretation of their religion, and I support the right to have their own schools. I support the Plymouth Brethren, who have a very literal version of the Bible, which I don't necessarily agree with, but they have a right to run their own schools in their own way. So whilst we've got to, of course, oppose hate speech and picking out people because they are of a certain religion, we cannot allow the state to decree what we say in public about other religions. We have a right to have formidable debate, and that is what we should fight for in this assembly. Thank you.
And next speaker is Giorgita Sukevietiene.
Thank you, Madam President. This significant report provides a balanced and timely response to one of the key challenges facing our societies today. Freedom of religion or belief, including the right not to believe, is a cornerstone of democratic society. It is inseparable from equality, human dignity, and non-discrimination. As clearly stated in the report, this freedom is protected under Article 9 of the European Convention of Human Rights and remains essential for ensuring pluralism and peaceful coexistence in Europe. At the same time, we cannot ignore the worrying rise of intolerance across our continent. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other forms of religious hatred are increasing, often fueled by geopolitical tensions and amplified through online platforms. These trends are not only threaten individuals and communities, but also undermine social cohesion and trust in democratic institutions. We welcome the report's strong emphasis on the responsibility of states to act. Measures to combat extremism and terrorism must never be applied in a discriminatory or disproportionate way. Security and freedom must go hand in hand. We also underline the importance of education, dialogue, and religious literacy. Building mutual understanding between people of different beliefs, religious or non-religious, is essential for preventing prejudice and fostering respect. Finally, we support the call for political leaders to refrain from the misuse of instrumentalization of religion. Responsible leaders is crucial in shaping inclusive and respectful public discourse. This resolution reaffirms our shared commitment to human rights, equality, and democratic values. It sends a clear message. Europe must remain a place where everyone can feel free or believe or not believe without fear or discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, Jean-Philippe Lebitsky.
Dear colleagues, I would like to thank Francesco Verducci for his important and timely report on religious freedom in Europe. It draws attention to issues that require our continued vigilance. Although legal standards exist, the protection of religious freedom remains uneven. In many countries, it is guaranteed in law, but not always respected in practice. This is particularly visible in cases concerning offences against religious feelings, where the balance between freedom of expression and respect for believers is sometimes lost. This is not about limiting free speech, but about exercising it responsibly. Today, discrimination is often indirect. It may take the form of seemingly neutral policies that in reality restricts the ability to practice religion in daily life. Freedom of religion is not just one right among others. It is a cornerstone of social order. Its protection is essential for real participation in society and for peaceful coexistence. However, laws alone are not enough. We need constant public policies, educations that fosters mutual understanding and responsible public debate. We should also remain attentive to developments in some countries where proposals such as banning children's confession are deeply concerning, and we are firmly opposed to them as they risk undermining both religious freedom and the rights of parents. This shows a broader problem. Rights may exist on paper, but still be weakened in practice. That is why we must treat freedom of religion as a concrete reality requiring constant care and shared responsibility. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And next speaker is Lesia Vasilenko. Not? Not here. And then we will go further in the list. Mariam Goika, please.
Dear President and colleagues, I want to thank the rapporteur, Mr. Verducci, for this timely report. As someone born in Germany as part of the Turkish diaspora, I know this is not an abstract debate, it's a lived reality. And we stand firmly against all forms of intolerance, racism, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim racism, and xenophobia. Freedom of religion is not optional. It is a fundamental right protected under the core international human rights instruments. Yet across Europe, discrimination based on religion is unfortunately intensifying. According to the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, 47% of Muslims report experiencing racial discrimination. Among visibly Muslim women, especially those wearing a headscarf, this rate even rises further. They face what the international institutions define as a triple penalty: for being women, for belonging to an ethnic minority, and for being a Muslim. These are not just statistics, they have real consequences. Denying a woman employment because of her faith is not neutrality, and defending attacks on sacred values as free speech is not freedom. This goes beyond individual prejudice. What we are witnessing today is the normalization of anti-Muslim racism and the institutionalization of exclusion. It is reinforced through othering in public discourses and policy frameworks, and intensified by stereotyping and stigmatizing narratives, especially in media and digital spaces. At the same time, online hate and new technologies amplify existing biases. And this is only the visible part. Many victims do not report discrimination, reflecting a growing loss of trust. And when trust erodes, it becomes not only a human rights issue, it's a threat to democratic stability and social cohesion. Dear colleagues, Europe cannot afford to normalize discrimination or institutionalize exclusion. What we need is clear, more dialogue, more responsible public discourse, and genuine inclusion. Turkey will continue to stand firmly for a system where freedom of religion is universal and dignity is indivisible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Leslie Griffiths.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my friend Francesco for such a wonderful report that has got us all thinking. And I would just like to come to this debate perhaps from a different angle. Of course, I support all that's been said about fundamental human rights and the dangers of the moment. But my angle is a different one, because I am and have been a religious leader myself, the head of the Methodist Church in Great Britain, and still have a considerable role to play there in the United Kingdom. And for me, what I wish for were educated journalists who, when they report stories, would understand what it is they're reporting. Often there are nuances from history that are lost on journalists who simply want to file their material very quickly in broad black and white terms. Similarly, I've heard politicians, people in this room even as I've sat here, so blandish us with exaggerated and stereotypical ways of thinking that, again, I want educated politicians who take the trouble to understand what religion is all about. And then, finally, I want church leaders to be educated in how to present the religion that they stand for, that makes it accessible, a gateway to all that is as noble in human society as anything can be. My entire humanity has been coloured and shaped and built because of my religious faith. And I'm not going to stand in a secular body in a debate like this and pretend it's otherwise. I'm very careful in secular debates elsewhere to toe the line and not to be sanctimonious and religious in the wrong way. So I call really for greater sensitivity, better educated sectors commenting on religion, and I hope that we can make that something we can centre on.
Thank you. Next speaker is Victoria Tieblum.
Madam President, Sweden used to be a safe haven for Jews, but not anymore. Some have now left Sweden, and others are, for example, advised not to wear a kippah in public. This is not a minor issue, it's a failure. At the same time, we see large, aggressive demonstrations linked to the Middle East conflict taking over streets across Europe, not only in Sweden. Public spaces are being dominated, tensions are escalating, and ordinary citizens feel pushed aside. And the question must be asked, where are the limits? Because freedom of expression and freedom of assembly were never meant to justify intimidation, hatred, or the erosion of public order. This report is clear. Anti-Semitism is rising across Europe, not quietly, but openly, in our cities, on our streets, and online. And too often, the response has been too weak, too slow, or simply absent. A society that cannot protect its Jewish population cannot claim to fully protect freedom of religion. And a society that allows extremist voices to set the tone in public space risks losing something even more fundamental: trust. We need to be honest about this. Importing conflicts from other parts of the world into European street has consequences. Ignoring those consequences has even greater ones. Our responsibility as political leaders is not to explain this away, but to act. That means enforcing the law without hesitation. It means setting clear boundaries for what is acceptable in the public space. And it means defending our democratic values with confidence, not apology. Because freedom of religion is not just about rights on paper, it is about reality in everyday life. And right now, for many Jews in Europe, that reality is deteriorating. That should not only worry us, it should force us to change course. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will give now the floor to next speaker, Stephanie Cousy, observer from Canada.
Honourable colleagues, cher colleague, I would like to thank the rapporteur, Signor Francesco Verducci, for his excellent work in preparing such a comprehensive and informative report. I share Rapporteur Verducci's concern that rising exclusion and intolerance on religious grounds are a matter of serious concern in Europe. Unfortunately, this tragedy extends beyond Europe. According to the latest statistics, religion was the second most common motive for police-reported hate crimes in Canada in 2025 after race and ethnicity. The Conservative Party of Canada, which I represent, is guided by founding principles that affirm individual freedoms, including those of speech, worship, assembly, and association. In recent high-profile parliamentary debates on hate speech in Canada, we have reaffirmed our commitment to defending freedom of religious expression and to upholding the right to read and share sacred texts. Furthermore, we have a long track record in government of consistently upholding this principle, including by promoting it beyond our borders. In February 2013, former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper established an Office of Religious Freedom within the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. This office was given a mandate to advance freedom of religion and belief as a key priority in foreign policy. Having proudly served in Canada's diplomatic service and been posted abroad for several years, I saw great merit in creating this entity. Regrettably, a subsequent federal government closed this institution in 2016, only 3 years after it opened. As recently as January 2026, the Conservative Party of Canada renewed its call for the Office of Religious Freedom to be re-established so that Canada can promote religious freedom around the world and stand for persecuted minorities. As parliamentarians, we must all work to ensure that religious communities across our countries are able to practice their faith
publicly and freely without fear of discrimination and intimidation. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then next speaker is Jelisaveta Jasko, please.
Religious discrimination usually doesn't come as the isolated form of discrimination. It usually comes together with ethnic or gender discrimination. But actually, it's religious discrimination that is used as the weapon by many authoritarian regimes. And in my speech, I want to mention how Russia is using religion actually to persecute many ethnic groups inside Russia. And I also want to mention Crimean Tatars and Crimea. When Crimea was annexed in 2014, what Russia was doing, they were organizing raids to persecute and to arrest hundreds of Crimean Tatars, especially during the religious mass that they were having. Always, if there is someone who is a Crimean Tatar, that would Russians find quite suspicious, and they would think that they are not entirely loyal to the Russian system. And when I want to tell a personal story also very shortly, that when many years ago I was in Moscow, that was the moment when I've learned what Russian imperialistic thinking is and what Russian racism is. Because one woman in the Russian museum was telling to me how she would be dreaming that there will be no people in that country that would celebrate such holidays as Kurban Bayram, which is a Muslim holiday. That was the moment when I was quite shocked, and I've learned what that racism is based on religious background. And I just want all of these stories to be heard, and that all the people that face this persecution will be freed.
Thank you. And we'll give floor to Luz Martínez Sello, please.
Señora presidenta, debatimos hoy un informe de gran relevancia para la salud democrática de nuestras sociedades. En los últimos años hemos asistido a un preocupante aumento de intolerancia religiosa. El antisemitismo y la islamofobia han crecido de forma alarmante, a menudo alimentados por tensiones internacionales que polarizan el debate público y amplifican los discursos de odio, especialmente en redes sociales. Esta deriva es incompatible con los valores del Consejo de Europa y exige una respuesta firme. No podemos ignorar que algunos actores políticos contribuyen activamente a este clima. En mi país, en España, la extrema derecha ha promovido iniciativas de carácter excluyente que presentan el Islam desde una óptica alarmista y generalizadora, vinculando injustificadamente la práctica religiosa de millones de personas con supuestos riesgos para la seguridad o la identidad nacional. Estas posiciones carecen de base empírica, fomentan la estigmatización y buscan restringir expresiones religiosas legítimas en el espacio público, como la vestimenta o los lugares de culto, llegando incluso a planteamientos que pueden entenderse como una forma de limpieza cultural. La instrumentalización política de la religión no conduce a mayor seguridad ni a más cohesión social, sino al autoritarismo político y al extremismo religioso. Y dejemos claro, un xenófobo no puede ser un verdadero cristiano, por mucho que se presente como tal. Nadie debe ser responsabilizado por actos cometidos por otros en nombre de una religión, ni cargar con prejuicios colectivos por su fe, su origen o su apariencia. Además, la discriminación religiosa afecta de manera especialmente grave a mujeres identificables por su indumentaria y a personas migrantes o de minorías étnicas, lo que exige políticas sensibles a estas vulnerabilidades. La educación es clave. Debemos avanzar hacia una alfabetización religiosa plural y objetiva desde edades tempranas. Proteger la libertad religiosa es reafirmar el proyecto europeo de convivencia, el pluralismo y la democracia, un pilar esencial de la convivencia pacífica en una Europa cada vez más plural y diversa.
Thank you. And next speaker is Monika Bartos.
Dear Madam Chair, thank you for the floor. Dear fellow members, I would like to thank the rapporteur for bringing this extremely important issue to your attention. In my opinion, the study conducted in the United Kingdom and the conclusions drawn from the findings, they are a very important part of the report. I believe that we can only find solutions after gaining a thorough understanding of the circumstances and background. I consider it essential that we translate the goals set out in theory and international and national regulations into practice. I come from a country whose 1,000-year history as a nation is rooted in Christianity and which has experienced the nation-preserving power of Christianity many times throughout its history. Unfortunately, today Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the world. 388 million Christians are suffering persecution today because of their faith. Unfortunately, violence and discrimination against Christians are also present in Europe and are on the rise. When we examining the causes, I see that the accelerated changes in the world, such as mass illegal migration, have created situations for which many communities in Europe were unprepared. They are now suffering the consequences. But it is not only them, it is also the newcomers who have lost their roots and are living their daily lives without a foothold in a foreign environment, striving to reshape it according to their own traditions. Laws are important, but they are not enough. Politically correct statements, meanwhile, obscure the truth. Without the truth, however, we will never achieve the reconciliation that is a necessary prerequisite for lasting peace. Pope St. John Paul II said that peace is based on truth, justice, solidarity, and freedom. His words provide good guidance for our further work. Thank you for your kind attention.
And the next speaker is Yevgenia Kravchuk, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rapporteur De Francesco, for being so inclusive during the work on this report, to listen to so many voices and really bringing together a very good document. And we're here during our speeches, dialogue, trainings, let's build bridges. But what if your neighbor wants to wage a holy war on your country? That's what's happening with Russian Federation against Ukraine. Russian Orthodox Church and Patriarch Kirill called this war of aggression a holy war, basically blessing soldiers to kill Ukrainians, to kill civilians, to target, and actually, it's not a sin. You can go to heaven after this holy war. And right now, more than 700 of different religious sites of different confessions are partially or totally destroyed in Ukraine. 67 clergy members of different convocations are killed, some of them still in captivity. And this happens when there is a political instrumentalization of religion and of when a confession becomes a state one. Russian Orthodox Church is part of the regime. It's part of the Russian world ideology, and it's not independent. That's what happens when religion loses independence and does not play the role for love, for having peace in soul, but actually to cause violence. And we will rebuild the churches, the mosques that were destroyed, and Ukraine will always be welcomed to different confessions and to different religions, and but the religion cannot be instrumentalized by the aggressor states. Thank you.
And I give floor to Ronan Mullen, please.
Thank you very much. I think it was Abraham Lincoln, when somebody said to him that God was on our side, he said something like, "I rather hope, gentlemen, that we are on God's side." When we talk about freedom of religion, freedom not to have a religion, freedom to change one religion, these are all vital components of a civilized and democratic society. What we must always work for is a healthy pluralism, which doesn't seek to reduce religion or to confine it to the private space. And I want to commend some of the amendments here today, those which recognise that there are proportionate and legally prescribed measures that are legitimate to safeguard public safety, but also that uphold the rights of religious communities to live and teach and to convey their belief, because it isn't just freedom of religion that's important, or freedom of belief, but freedom to manifest it. If there is a language that I regret in this otherwise great report, it's the suggestion that religious education must be inspired by pluralism and be objective and non-confessional. Well, pluralism, yes, but let's not try and have some kind of a house-trained religion. People are entitled to look to the horizons with their eyes and their hearts, and that is, I think, why most of our societies have taken the benefits, as has been pointed out by writers such as Tom Holland in his excellent book Dominion, from the influence of Christianity, the Judeo-Christian principles that have really been at the foundation for what we call human rights today. And that's not to forget the high points of the Islamic tradition as well. So let's remember that it sometimes seems at the moment like it's Pope Leo who's trying to hold society together and to say that respect for human dignity is indivisible. The person who is deprived of a chance to be a practicing doctor because he or she opposes abortion, that person is suffering religious discrimination. The person who wants to protect the climate is often operating from a higher sense that nature is something given to us and not just something for us to control and manipulate according to our will. So let's honour religion by not instrumentalising it to allow people the freedom of their spiritual search, and to recognise that the state is entitled to proportionately take measures so as to ensure an orderly and just society and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I give floor to Sandra Zamba.
La libertà religiosa e il principio di non discriminazione nascono dalla stessa matrice, la dignità umana, che è il bene più prezioso che dobbiamo custodire. Eppure libertà religiosa e diritti umani vivono oggi una nuova stagione di crisi. Limitazione della libertà, violenza, persecuzioni per ragioni di fede sono più numerose, certamente in Africa e in Asia, ma non risparmiano neppure l'Occidente. Autoritarismo, nazionalismo religioso, ideologie identitarie e naturalmente il nuovo terrorismo hanno portato anche in Occidente e ovunque hanno aumentato forme di intolleranza e di violenza contro le fedi e le religioni. Ieri in Libano una statua di Gesù Cristo è stata profanata da un soldato dell'IDF e ieri a Milano, nel mio paese, un grave fatto di antisemitismo si è consumato. Buddisti, cristiani, ebrei, hindu, musulmani subiscono discriminazione, violenze, arresti, rapimenti. Eppure la libertà religiosa è il cuore dei diritti umani e quando è violata possiamo sostenere che tutti gli altri diritti sono parimenti violati. Per questo occorre che la politica assuma con forza questo tema e sostenga le comunità locali che hanno realizzato buone prassi, aiuti e soprattutto investa nella forma più importante che noi abbiamo per combattere la discriminazione religiosa, ed è l'insegnamento e la cultura. Occorre tornare a investire fortemente nell'insegnamento, nell'educazione dei nostri giovani, perché si insegni e si impari il rispetto e lo si interpreti prima di tutto personalmente. Esprimo al collega Verducci il mio apprezzamento per questo importante e interessante rapporto.
Thank you. And the next speaker will be Wanda Nowicka, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Diversity, pluralism, and freedom, these are the values I believe myself. I do believe in the world, that the world is possible where people can believe in whatever they want without any pressure, any influence from others, free from all kinds of pressures. Religion and other beliefs are very important aspects of our identities, and they should be defended. But still, it is not the case in many places of the world, especially where there is a domination of one religion. When you have a domination in a given country of the religion, there is always a tendency to impose this given religion to others. And this is not what should happen. Moreover, we should remember also about the role of the religious institutions. I mean, personal beliefs is one thing, but the role of the religious institutions in our states is sometimes very problematic, especially in the countries where, again, religion is dominated. So, for example, in Poland, religious institutions are trying always to, and actually they do it successfully, to impose certain values, like, for example, they are against abortion, they are against LGBTI. That's why we still in Poland cannot have those rights. But even sexuality education, this is something that has been questioned by Polish Catholic Church. So this is not the way how religion, how religious institutions in democratic societies should be operating. So let's hope that we will be able to change that, so that everybody in the world would be different and equal and could be practice whatever religion or belief wants to practice. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now give floor to Rostislav Tistuk.
Thank you, dear Chair. Dear colleagues, today's topic is extremely important for Ukraine. Our constitution guarantees freedom of thought, conscience and religion, as well as the separation of church and state. For this reason, freedom of religion for us is not just an abstract slogan, but an integral part of the European democratic model that we defend every day. However, Russia views religion in a completely different way. For it, religion is not a space of freedom, but an instrumental of control, propaganda and war. The Russian Orthodox Church has for years drawn closer to the Russian state and its military machine. Reuters has previously documented the practice of blessing Russian weapons, including nuclear arms, while Patriarch Kirill has openly supported the war against Ukraine, presenting it as a civilizational confrontation. In the temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories, Russia is systematically suppressing freedom of religion. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has documented that under occupation Russia restricts freedom of belief, persecutes people for lawfully exercising the right and imposing its own culture and ideological space. This is particularly painful when we look at the situation of Ukrainian churches and clergy. This office reported that 2 Greek Catholic priests who had been detained by the Russian occupation authorities since November 2022 were released only during an exchange in June 2024. One of them described torture, regular beatings, prolonged stress positions and cruel treatment while in detention in the occupied territory of Donetsk region. In another documented case, a priest detained in the occupied part of the Zaporizhia region describes this imprisonment moment with the words, "Faith in God help me not to lose my sanity." Therefore, protecting freedom of religion today also means protecting the right of people to remain who they are, without fear, without pressure, without torture, and without being forced to renounce their church, their community, and their national identity. Thank you.
And I now give floor to Patrick Jaskowski.
Dear colleagues, freedom of religion or beliefs is one of the foundations of European civilization. It is a basic human right, thus must always be protected. Doesn't matter if someone believes or does not believe. We cannot accept a world where people are punished for their faith and where religion places become targets of the violence. Today, we see this very clearly in Ukraine. Russian aggression is not only destroying cities and infrastructure. It is also destroying churches, temples, and places of prayers. It is destroying the space for religion freedoms. And this exactly what happened to Polish church in Lviv a few weeks ago. This is a clear violation of human rights. Poland strongly supports freedom of religion or beliefs. We propose the United Nations resolution that created the International Day for victims of violence based on religion or beliefs. But declarations alone are not enough. We must respond strongly. We must respond together to every case of religious violation. We must protect the religious minorities, and we must support people who defend human rights. Europe cannot stay silent about religious persecution. Europe must remain a container of freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Lucia Plavakova.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you, Francesco, for this important report. In our liberal group, we are committed to promoting two fundamental principles. First, the freedom of religion for all groups that respect democratic values. And second, the protection of human rights, including safeguarding minorities from religiously motivated discrimination or the erosion of their rights. In the Slovak Parliament, together with my colleagues, I submitted a resolution addressing these two principles, similar to the one which we are discussing now here. Although it was debated, unfortunately, it was not adopted. Nevertheless, we remain committed to advancing and defending these values back home and also here. In Slovakia, smaller religious groups face discrimination because they are not allowed to register officially. A few years ago, the law was amended to require 50,000 supporting signatures. In a country of our size, this effectively makes registration unattainable for smaller communities and in practice restrict freedom of religion. At the same time, we are seeing an increasing number of laws influenced by religious views alongside significant involvement of the Catholic Church in public affairs. This raises concerns about the secular foundations of states, just as no one seeks to interfere how churches govern their internal matters. Religious institutions should not impose their rules on society as a whole. That is not what democracy stands for, and I believe we must firmly resist such developments. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I give floor to Murat Kahitsingi.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleagues, I would like to thank the rapporteur for shedding light on one of the most pressing and sensitive challenges facing Europe and the entire world today. As it is stated in the report, freedom of religion or belief is not a secondary right. It is a cornerstone of democratic life and of coexistence in Europe. The report also underlines that discrimination based on religion is growing across Europe and that Islamophobia has become one of the most visible and alarming manifestations. Let me be clear about how serious this challenge has become in Europe recently. According to the EU Commission's recent data, Muslims are the second largest religious group in the EU, with around 26 million people, which amount to 47% rate, meaning 1 in 2 Muslims say that they experience racial discrimination. In some European countries, this figure even exceeds 70%. Islamophobia shows itself in different ways. Far-right campaigns account for 25% of incidents, hate speech around 20%, and verbal and physical attacks around 15%. These figures point to a broader democratic challenge for Europe because exclusion and discrimination based on religion weaken both social cohesion and equal citizenship. Our duty must be to protect freedom of religion and belief for everyone, to encourage dialogue and mutual understanding, and to defend a world where diversity is respected, not feared. Thank you.
Thank you. At this moment, I want to inform you that around 7 o'clock I have to cut the list. So also we will change the chair, so it's not personal where to put the line. But then keep the time, we can get more people to speak. Next one is Piero Fassino, please.
Grazie Presidente. Io prima di tutto voglio esprimere apprezzamento per la relazione del collega Verducci, che mi è sembrata con argomentazioni solide e con un impianto che non possiamo che condividere. Io voglio richiamare la vostra attenzione nei pochi secondi di questo mio intervento su uno degli aspetti della discriminazione che noi conosciamo in questi periodi, ed è i rigurgiti forti di antisemitismo che sono esplosi in tutto il mondo. Ora noi sappiamo bene che questi fenomeni di antisemitismo sono molto legati alla crisi profonda che ha investito il Medio Oriente, alle guerre che in questi mesi ancora incendiano quella regione, e tutto questo naturalmente non può che preoccuparci moltissimo. Ma il punto che credo non possa essere accettato è che la critica politica a chi ha scatenato quelle guerre, la critica politica che si vuole rivolgere al governo israeliano piuttosto che al presidente Trump, non può tradursi in un pregiudizio nei confronti degli ebrei. Non c'è nessuna ragione per cui si chieda a un ebreo ovunque viva nel mondo di rispondere degli atti che compie il governo israeliano. Così come non può essere accettato in nessun modo l'idea che qualsiasi evento che accada nel Medio Oriente non può che essere imputato alla natura, all'identità ebraica, anziché alle scelte di un governo che, come tutti i governi, può essere criticato e contestato, e io lo critico e lo contesto. Per questo quindi credo che abbiamo il dovere di mettere, come dire, una distinzione molto netta tra la polemica e la critica politica e le forme di intolleranza come l'antisemitismo che avvelenano la società e determinano soltanto una condizione di maggiore conflittualità.
Thank you. Next one is Niklaus Samuel Gugge.
Sehr geehrte Frau Vorsitzende, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, Religionsfreiheit ist kein Randthema. Sie ist Herzstück einer freien Gesellschaft. Ich danke dem Berichterstatter, aber ich sage deutlich, Artikel 9 EMRK genügt nicht. Wir müssen ihn erweitern, nicht einschränken. Und ich danke der geschätzten Kollegin aus Österreich, Andrea. Ihr Einwand weist in die richtige Richtung. Artikel 9 muss auch Unterricht, Erziehung und Weitergabe des Glaubens schützen. Eine Frage an dieses Haus. Sind wir uns bewusst, dass Christinnen und Christen weltweit die am meisten verfolgte Religionsgemeinschaft sind? Weltweit. Und das gerade in Europa, einem Kontinent christlicher Tradition. Übergriffe auf Kirchen, Synagogen, Seelsorger und Konvertiten nehmen immer mehr zu. Wir dürfen nicht wegschauen. Und interessanterweise, die Europäische Union hat einen Koordinator gegen Antisemitismus. Sie hat einen Koordinator gegen antimuslimischen Hass, aber für antichristlichen Hass keinen. Diese Ungleichbehandlung muss ein Ende haben. Erstens, Religionsfreiheit ist unteilbar. Sie gilt für alle oder für niemanden. Zweitens, staatliche Neutralität heißt nicht Religionsfeindlichkeit. Der Staat soll nicht glauben, aber er muss Glauben ermöglichen. Drittens, Religionsfreiheit endet, wo die Rechte anderer beginnen. Keine Tradition rechtfertigt Gewalt oder Diskriminierung. In der Schweiz ist religiöse Vielfalt Alltag, nicht Bedrohung, sondern Stärke. Ich danke.
Thank you. And next speaker is Jon Engen-Helgheim.
Thank you, Mr. President. Across Europe, states are confronted with serious challenges related to radicalization, failed integration and harmful social practices. These challenges require preventive action. Freedom of religion is a fundamental right, but it's also well established that this right is not absolute. Article 9 of the Convention recognizes that the manifestation of religion may be subject to limitation where this is necessary to protect public safety, public order and more. The Court has therefore recognized a margin of appreciation for states when assessing what is necessary in their own societies. This principle is not a loophole. It's a safeguard that allows democratic states to act responsibly. If states are denied sufficient room to adopt proportionate, neutral and preventive legislation, we risk undermining their ability to address radicalization and coercive practices before they escalate. Protecting individual autonomy sometimes requires setting clear legal boundaries. Measures aimed at preventing coercion, extremism or social pressure are not acts of discrimination when they are grounded in law and pursue legitimate aims. On the contrary, they can be essential to safeguarding the very freedoms this Council exists to protect.
Thank you. And next speaker is Hazan Tachoe.
Chair, distinguished colleagues, freedom of religion or belief is not only fundamental human right, but also cornerstone of democratic societies. Yet, as highlighted in the draft resolution before us, manifestations of intolerance and discrimination based on religion are on the rise, including in the form of hate speech, exclusion, and violence. In Cyprus, this challenge can be observed in particularly concerning manner. Turkish Cypriot people, with their distinct cultural and religious identity, continue to face various forms of discrimination and hostility, often rooted in anti-Muslim sentiment and ethnic prejudice. There have been repeated attacks against places of worship and cultural heritage. Mosques in cities such as Limassol, Larnaca, Episcopi have been subjected to arson and vandalism, while Ottoman cemeteries continue to face desecration and neglect. Inflammatory rhetoric further contributes to this environment. Extremist political parties and important religious figures have described Muslims as a threat. This narrative does not remain without consequence. In recent years, Turkish Cypriots have been subjected to physical attacks and acts of violence. Civilians have been assaulted, vehicles vandalized, and groups of young people attacked. In some cases, individuals have been attacked both verbally and physically, including a young woman suffering injuries in Ayanapa in 2023. Distinguished colleagues, as rightly emphasized in the draft resolution, education must promote dialogue, pluralism, and understanding, not reinforce stereotypes or division. Public discourse must also reflect responsibility. Political and religious leaders have a duty to refrain from stigmatizing language and actively counter hatred and discrimination. Ensuring freedom of religion or belief requires more than legal guarantees. It requires a genuine commitment to.
Thank you. Susanna Vela is the next speaker. Yes, no, we don't hear yet. The card is installed.
No?
No.
Wait. Wait. Okay, thank you. En primer lugar, quiero felicitar a Francesco Verducci por el excelente trabajo realizado en este informe tan oportuno como necesario. Comparto plenamente la resolución que hoy debatimos. La libertad de religión y de convicción incluido el derecho a no tener creencias, es un derecho fundamental y un pilar esencial de nuestras sociedades democráticas. Los poderes públicos tienen la responsabilidad de garantizar la igualdad y prevenir cualquier forma de discriminación. Esto implica asegurar que todas las personas puedan ejercer sus creencias o la ausencia de ellas, tanto en el ámbito público como en el privado. En este sentido, la laicidad debe ser un principio rector y la separación entre Iglesia y Estado debe ser real y efectiva. Quisiera también destacar el papel clave de la educación. Solo a través de ella podremos combatir prejuicios, fomentar el respeto mutuo y promover el diálogo entre diferentes creencias. Ese es el camino hacia sociedades más inclusivas y cohesionadas. Permítanme añadir una breve reflexión desde mi contexto nacional. En Andorra, nuestro sistema institucional presenta particularidades con influencia religiosa que tienen impacto en ámbitos como la educación, la salud o los derechos sexuales y reproductivos, incidiendo también en la igualdad de género. Esto pone de manifiesto que no se trata solo de discriminación entre creencias y religiones, sino cómo ciertos marcos institucionales pueden afectar de pleno en el ejercicio de los derechos fundamentales. Por ello, es esencial encontrar un equilibrio. La libertad religiosa debe convivir con el resto de derechos, pero nunca situarse por encima de ellos. Andorra ha hecho avances importantes en la protección de los derechos humanos, pero debemos seguir avanzando, asegurando que el respeto, la garantía y la plena implementación de estos derechos prevalezcan siempre sobre cualquier imposición derivada de las creencias. Gracias.
Thank you, and I will give the last two speakers the floor before I go for the rapporteur and the chair, so it will be next one, Tamila Tasheva.
Distinguished colleagues, thank you for this important report. Freedom of religion or belief is fundamental human rights and cornerstone of democratic societies. And yet today we see growing manifestation of religious intolerance, discrimination and misuse of religions across Europe and beyond. Unfortunately, conflicts and political tension increase political intolerance. And this is especially true during armed conflict and foreign occupation, with religious freedom often being restricted and religious communities becoming target of persecution. Ukraine, unfortunately, know it all too well. Since Russian illegal occupation of Crimea in 2014, religious freedom on the peninsula has been significantly restricted. Before the occupation, there were more than 2,200 registered religious organizations in Crimea. By 2024, that number dropped to less than 1,000. Religious communities that do not align with occupation authorities face intimidation, restrictions, and forced closures. Members of Orthodox Church of Ukraine, Muslim communities, Jehovah's Witnesses, Protestant groups, and others have all experienced pressure and persecutions. Crimean Tatars, the indigenous peoples of Crimea, and particularly affected. Many religious leaders and communities members have faced detention, searches, and politically motivated persecutions. At the same time, religion is often dangerously used as a tool of state propaganda. In the temporarily occupied territories, structures affiliated with the Russian Orthodox Church are often used to legitimize the occupation, spread pro-war narratives, and undermine religious plurality. This shows how religions can be misused to suppress identity, to silent communities. This is why protecting freedom of religious and belief is not only a human rights issue, but an essential part of peace, stability, and democratic resilience. Thank you for your support, and thank you for this brilliant report.
Thank you. And then final speaker on the list, Maria Mezentseva-Fedorenko, please.
Thank you, dear President. I'm lucky to speak last but not least, I hope. Colleagues, when we open the Google search, it's very simple to see that Russian Federation unfortunately destroyed hundreds of churches, and more than 60 priests of different confessions and religions were killed, not just wounded. Recently in Ukraine, one of the house of prayers was completely destroyed, leaving dead and wounded. I think Mr. Verducci will reassess his leadership of this important paper later in the history, because on both sides, on one end it talks about the freedom of religion, On the other hand, and thank you, dear rapporteur, that you included that, it talks about the oppression of the freedom of religion. And we talk about different nationalities, different religions. In the holy books of Quran, Torah, Bible, it says one cannot oppress, one cannot kill, and one cannot possess other freedom. But unfortunately, a common aggressor for us is doing that, is conducting that daily basis. Colleagues, when we were promoting an amendment talking about Russian Orthodox Church, which was forbidden by law in Ukraine, taking the consideration that it's the house of propaganda, not the house of religion, and its leader, Patriarch Kirill, is the former KGB agent, we were trying to protect you so that this propaganda of non-religion is spreading across member states. I do hope we can all tackle it and the real freedom of religion will prevail. Thank you, Rapporteur, for your report. I call colleagues to support this important document. Thank you, President.
Thank you so much for the lively debate. I must now interrupt the list of the speakers. The speeches of members of the speaker list who have been present during the debate but not have been able to speak may be given to the table office for publication in the official report, max 400 words. I remind colleagues that the typewritten text can be submitted electronically if possible no later than 4 hours after the list of the speakers was interrupted, so tonight. And now I call Mr. Francesco Verducci, rapporteur, to reply. You have 3 minutes. S'il vous plaît.
Grazie Presidente. Innanzitutto voglio ringraziare tutti i colleghi, è stato davvero un dibattito di grande ricchezza, di grande profondità e penso che faccia parte a pieno titolo di questa nostra risoluzione e sia anche una spinta a tenere vivo questo tema nei nostri lavori, vista la sua urgenza e la sua importanza. Non potrò citare tutti, citerò 3 colleghi in rappresentanza di un dibattito così complesso. La prima citazione che voglio fare va alla collega Goca. Lei diceva a un certo punto non è statistica il riferimento alle discriminazioni basate sull'oppressione religiosa, non è statistica, aggiungo io, è vita reale. Questo è il tema vero che noi abbiamo. La sensazione per chi è vittima di queste discriminazioni di essere sempre sotto potenziale attacco, il restringimento degli spazi di libertà, degli spazi di sicurezza e degli spazi di cittadinanza è una grande questione democratica, dobbiamo riconoscerla ed affrontarla. A questo lego una considerazione, quella del collega Lord Griffiths, sul tema del discorso pubblico che è a mio avviso fondamentale. Diceva Lord Griffiths l'importanza di avere un racconto corretto dei fatti, io aggiungo la complessità, la diversità dei fatti, non lo stigma, non lo stereotipo. E voglio aggiungere una considerazione ulteriore che richiama altri elementi di questo dibattito, la libertà di espressione che impedisce ad altri di esprimersi è una libertà fasulla, è una libertà che si autodistrugge, perché scegliere la libertà degli oppressori contro la libertà degli oppressi è una finta apertura. L'appartenenza religiosa non può mai essere causa di incompatibilità. Tutti i gruppi minoritari hanno diritto di protagonismo nelle società e questo distingue le società democratiche dai regimi autoritari. Abbiamo il dovere di garantire questo diritto. Cito altri 2 temi. L'istruzione qui è stata continuamente sottolineata e insieme a questa, come antidoto alla polarizzazione, il tema della cooperazione interreligiosa, voglio dire anche il dialogo tra le città, il dialogo tra i luoghi religiosi delle diverse città, la raccolta dei dati sull'intolleranza, sulla discriminazione, sulla base di genere, etnia, nazionalità, appartenenza religiosa delle vittime, questo ci permette di avere piena contezza del fenomeno e gli strumenti adatti, concreti, per poterlo contrastare. E poi mi faccia dire, Presidente, una cosa in conclusione, con le parole, ed è la terza citazione che voglio fare, della collega ucraina Kravchuk. Lei a un certo punto ha detto una cosa molto forte, anche questa ci appartiene. Ricostruiremo le chiese che sono state abbattute. Sì, lo dobbiamo fare. Dobbiamo dire mai più chiese che abbattono altre chiese, ma chiese che sorgano insieme l'une e le altre per fare ricca, libera, autonoma, aperta la nostra società in cui convivere in pace gli uni con gli altri. Grazie Presidente e colleghi.
Thank you, Rapporteur. And does the chairperson, Madame Beatrice Fresco-Rolfo from the committee, do you wish to speak? You have also 3 minutes.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Chers collègues, pour beaucoup d'entre nous, la religion et la spiritualité constituent une dimension importante, une part de la conscience, voire de l'identité. Pour celles et ceux qui croient aux droits humains, la religion relève avant tout d'un droit, d'une liberté fondamentale, celle d'avoir une foi et de la pratiquer. Ou il convient de le souligner, celle de changer de conviction ou encore de ne pas avoir de religion du tout. L'appartenance religieuse peut également devenir un motif de discrimination qui bien souvent s'ajoute à d'autres motifs ou interagit avec eux. Pensons à toutes les situations où une personne est discriminée à la fois en tant que femme et en raison de son appartenance à une certaine religion, ou encore à l'intersection de la foi avec la nationalité ou l'origine ethnique. La Commission sur l'égalité et la non-discrimination, fidèle à son mandat et à celui de l'Assemblée parlementaire en général, ne pouvait donc qu'aborder le fait religieux sous ces deux angles, la liberté d'un côté et la non-discrimination de l'autre. Par ailleurs, ce rapport ne dissimule pas un autre aspect problématique, le fait que la religion est parfois instrumentalisée pour exclure ou stigmatiser certains individus et groupes, souvent sur la base de stéréotypes ou d'une réelle désinformation. Nous avons accompagné le rapport dans l'exploration de ce thème qui s'est révélé particulièrement intéressant. En effet, garantir la liberté de religion et de conviction signifie également mettre en valeur plusieurs dimensions de l'humanité et comparer différentes traditions culturelles et politiques. À la lumière de ces considérations, je ne peux que féliciter le rapporteur pour le travail qu'il a accompli et je suis sûre que nous pouvons compter sur un soutien fort et convaincu de cette Assemblée en faveur d'un texte positif, constructif, qui vise à contribuer à bâtir une Europe juste, libre et inclusive. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Madame President. Thank you. The debate is now closed, and we will move to the amendments and the votes. Thank you. So, Committee on Equality and Non-Discrimination has presented a draft resolution to which 5 amendments have been tabled. So we go for further any amendment which has been unanimously approved by the committee for the report shall not be put on the vote in the plenary and shall be declared as definitively approved unless 10 or more members in the assembly object. I understand that the chairperson of the committee wishes to propose the assembly that amendments number 3 and 4 to the draft resolution, which were unanimously approved by the committee, to be declared as definitively approved. Is that so, Madam Chair? Merci. So if no one objects, I will consider the amendments 3 and 4 to be approved. Is that any objection? No. There are amendments 3 and 4 to the draft resolution are therefore approved and will be not called for the vote. Then we will go for the rejection of the amendment. I understand the chairperson of the committee wishes to propose the assembly that amendment number 5 to the draft resolution, which was rejected by the committee with a 2/3 majority, be declared as a definitely rejected. Is that so, Madam Chair?
C'est exact, Madame la Présidente.
Merci. So if no objects, I will consider amendment number 5 to be rejected. Is there any objection? I don't see. So amendment 5 to the draft resolution is rejected and will be not called. And then we go for the amendments number 1 and 2. So amendment number 1, I understand there is also an oral sub-amendment to be proposed. Yeah, but to first call Mr. Oleksiy Gonzarenko, please, to support amendment number 1.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear colleagues. In amendment number 1,